I had the craziest cook for it. You want to hear it?
I do.
Sure.
It's such a crazy cook. Okay, so this would hit 2 birds with 1 stone. So one thing that also is kind of unfortunate about jungle is leashing.
Oh yeah.
I haven't even started yet. Calm down.
I'm just laughing because this whole episode is just you like pitching Phreak.
Yeah, whatever. Last one.
You're just like,
Last one.
Phreak, please, I need this.
Hello and welcome to The Dive, Season 8, Episode number 6. We have patch preview number 14.4, and nothing else has changed. Everything is normal here.
It's the same. I'm
David Phreak Turley,
LCS caster David Phreak
has
Turley.
always been here.
Yeah.
They actually told me to give you a super long intro.
Oh, okay.
So
keep it going, buddy.
Let's go with David Phreak Turley, first of his name, original caster of the LCS, god of puns and balancer of League of Legends. Welcome.
Tons of damage.
Tons of damage.
Hosted the first world championship in his own basement.
That's
Yeah.
true. Yep. Good to be back. How y'all doing?
Have you been watching the LCS at all?
I have. My fantasy team that I'm playing with a bunch of LOR community members is have a bunch of Cloud9 members on it.
All right.
That's not going too well. Yeah, I was like, I got Joji Pion and Vulcan. Y'all are idiots. What the hell are you doing? And I'm like, oh. And then week 3 happened, and I was like, okay, oof. So
How many points did you get?
I mean, so sometimes they like get a bunch of points and then lose. But I'm like 2-2 in fantasy right now.
I've actually never played Fantasy League because, like, when I was a player, I think it'd be really weird to play it while you're a player.
Just draft
Draft
yourself, bro.
Yeah, but what if I have my opponents on my team and I'm just like, I don't want it to affect the way I play. I'm just like, do I really want to gank top
Found that at
another
the end,
time?
you
Like,
know?
do I need to kill him? That's points for me
That's
if I
minus
don't.
0.5. Yeah.
But it's also a point for you if you do. Because you're getting
Yeah.
an extra kill. That's why you draft yourself.
Yeah, but I don't know.
So
It's-
really, it's a zero sum.
I don't know any pro player who plays.
No, I mean, I feel like, well, I only played it when we were sponsored by the app or whatever.
Nice.
That was like, you guys need to make a team, and we're like, okay. And then we did our drafting with like Dom or LS or
Yeah,
somebody.
I think both them and Yasso and we had a few people in there. I can't remember who all was in it. I think you were in our fantasy league.
Yeah, I think
at
so.
some point.
It was funny because we had a part in the dive where we would always talk about fantasy.
Yep.
And then we looked at it, or someone looked at it, and they're like, this is usually the lowest viewers, so let's not do this anymore.
Kobe's just flaming our former sponsor, by the way.
Now you know how we really
Also,
feel.
current partner of the LCS. I like fantasy for what it's worth. I don't always play it, but I think it can be fun for sure. Did you watch Worlds?
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you enjoy seeing LCS beat LEC?
Yeah. Oh, it was a really good moment. I always knew it was going to happen. You know, ever since MSI, I was like, they're going to get their due. And then finally, you know, got the clean sweep back. And then we got very stomped. And then I was hoping that the Shy would just win Worlds so that Energy could be the second best team in the world.
Yeah.
Same.
Because, you know, you lose to the champions, number 2.
There you go.
Now we're only number 3, unfortunately.
Yeah. Unfortunately.
That's not bad.
Not bad.
Yeah, number 3 team in the world, and they're like number 5 in the LCS. So I mean,
There you go.
we have like 3 world
Imagine
champions
if we
currently
had
in the
sent
LCS.
Immortals, right?
Yeah,
Immortals
right?
2 over Energy last year, easy. They got
What if
Worlds.
what if we don't invite Korea or China to Worlds
That's a good idea.
or Europe?
What if we just invite LCS to Worlds?
It's true.
We win!
It's like football over again.
When you think about it, LCS really is Worlds.
That's true.
Yeah,
players from a
everyone
lot of
comes here from all the regions. That's the best.
Yeah, we're good to go.
How's it been kind of being on the other side for a while now? Because obviously you cast LCS for what, 8 years, 9 years?
10.
10 years? There you go.
Wow. Way to keep up, bro.
Well, sorry. Okay. Well,
That was more hassle than it should have been.
No, this is perfect.
no, he's back. That's all I know.
I never left.
Just random aggression.
Also, for context, we asked Mark, what was your favorite part of casting, or what will you miss about being a caster? And he was like, nothing. He just find out, no hesitation.
Yeah.
Like, nothing, I don't care. So,
Nah, he's coping.
he actually, no, he was not. He was dead serious.
Yeah,
Like,
but he's
Azael followed up, and he was like, no, I actually don't care.
Oh, great.
he's just putting on a front. He's trying to seem tough.
Yeah. No, the biggest thing I miss is it was way easier. Like, you guys have had vacation for 2 weeks. Valorant's going on. Like, you're hanging out. I assume it's like you had to get up and I've been at work every day, you know, got stuff to do. I also get way more flame. Oh my, like people, you know, didn't like my casting sometimes. People were real cool. Man, there's when they think you've nerfed their champion, people are out there. It's a bit much, unfortunately, but also the job's really fun. So it's like, you know, there's obviously some bad, there's some good, but yeah, it's fun to do.
Yeah, I know you went off Twitter for a while.
Yeah,
Are you back on?
I still haven't loaded up Twitter in like forever. I will like read like top level Reddit threads and whatnot. Like I will be on social media. I like watch YouTube a lot.
Thank God that's your answer, because I sent you a DM and he didn't.
Yeah.
He don't know why he didn't.
Yeah,
answer
yeah,
back.
I
I was like, you know, I'm pretty sure, you know, he's just still sleeping. You know,
So,
he took a long nap.
You on Twitter, Phreak?
Yeah, legit haven't opened that.
You
app
read
in, like,
DMs?
actually 3 months.
Thank God.
I feel like your mentions must be one of the darkest places on the internet.
Yeah, I have no idea what mentions are anymore. It's great. For a while, I was reading them, like up until I don't know October or whatever. I was like,
that can't be real.
it
for
was
mental
not.
health.
It was
Like,
not
that
correct. But yeah, I realized like going into like the actual comment chains on Reddit's like not very helpful. Like the top level like threads are reasonably valuable when they actually want to do a better job of like seeing what's like said on Weibo or Inven instead of just like reading the Reddit stuff.
Yeah.
Because like you'll get in these like random I don't know circles of just everyone's like saying the same thing, and it's like, dude, Korea doesn't believe anything you're saying. It's like, as much people love to like, but in Korean solo queue, it's the better environment. And it's like, yeah, well, none of the Koreans say anything you're saying. So like, shut up about Yasuo or whatever, right? It's just like, there's a lot of that going on. China especially, and China's a ton of players, right? And currently second best region in the world. Maybe number one if you only discount T1. It's like, yeah, they believe way different stuff from everyone else.
Yeah.
Well, and they're also a massive majority of the player base. I mean, the people on Reddit, what do they account for as far as the total player base? Like 1%?
Yeah, you're like a really hardcore engaged part of the NA and somewhat EU audience, and it's like, yeah, you're an incredible minority here. Like, and sometimes what you're saying is,
Could be really valuable.
Yeah, sometimes
but
it's
not
things that are
always.
true, right? And it's like, well, players do feel this, right? At least a subsection of players. This might be felt broadly, it might not. But even just things like what champs are picked in a certain server makes the game feel different, right? If you have way more assassins somewhere, the game feels burstier. But like only on this server because they picked 3 times as many Fizz and Talon games. And it's like, oh, okay, well, that's true. In your meta game, the game's very bursty.
That's kind of really interesting then, actually, to me, because obviously it's natural for a company that's based out of LA, and has all English-speaking devs, presumably everyone can speak English.
Yeah.
You'd be looking at English resources like
much
Reddit.
easier.
So how are you guys actually trying to account for that then?
Yeah.
If it's like because Reddit could be saying this is the greatest season of all time, but if there's 80 million league players in China that are like, this is trash, what are we doing? Are you guys trying to actually account for that?
We are. I think we could do a better job, to be really clear. But so the other design lead on Seven Swift team is Korean American, and he reads Enven like constantly. So he's like up to date on the Korean Reddit equivalent, basically, and what people are saying over there. We also try to do a pretty good job of understanding what's going on in China as well. So we have like Chinese American devs as well who will like help with translations, or will literally just like bring stuff over. One thing we get every patch is a report on like, hey, we surveyed a bunch of players. So it's not just like, oh, we went to social media. It's we literally did a bunch of surveys, sent them out, and it's like, how did you feel? Like thumbs up, thumbs down, neutral on like every single champion change in the patch. And it's like, oh, they were like plus 80% on Ari 3 patches ago, or they were like, what the hell is this Rise buff? This is nothing. What are you doing? It's a minus 80% here on this one. And like, how you feeling about the season overall? What are some like touch points here? It's like we also like come out with questions like, hey, how do you feel about like how bursty is the game right now? And you'll get like a bunch of free responses where it's like, here's people who answer the question, and overall like we cultivated sentiment, and people are like, the game feels pretty bursty right now. So we have some outreach, right? And we don't reach all of our communities, but it's something I personally want to spend a lot more time on, especially because it's like quite literally my job to make sure the actual flow of the game like feels really good worldwide. It's like I need to be more in tune with what other communities are feeling. Like, yeah, I really know what the Reddit sentiment is, but like I do want to make sure I have a much more global perspective.
I like how we're hitting a couple of the top performers in this particular patch. Maokai, you already admitted to us
Elo inflator.
pre turning on the cameras here. That Maokai, everybody has had their eyes on Maokai, especially as support. But obviously multi-flex role champion, topping the charts for the win rates.
Yeah. So what's interesting is I went back and looked at this because I was curious. So if you were building him like correctly last season, he was also 55. If you went Radiant or Dead Man's Plate, people like used to build Even Shroud, which is like not correct. You either want to build the better tank item, which is Radiant Virtue, or you just want move speed. He was 55 on those builds too, like last season. Yeah. But because it wasn't discovered, like people didn't know, and so no one picked him and no one banned him. And then it moves over and he's not fighting against Mythics anymore. And Trailblazer was like, oh, I should build the move speed out of my Maokai. It's like, yeah, you should have been for 3 years. And now it's like, oh, well, now it's popular. Now people understand that it's good. Oh, the same champion is now popular and performing better because people are building him correctly. And it's like, yep, the champ's OP. He's been that way. If we had nerfed Maokai support like back in 2023, people were like, this champ has a 1% pick rate. What are you doing? It's like, well, he is OP, but until people learn it, you have to kind of wait.
Yeah.
So like this has been true, but yeah, I mean, he's really, really overpowered. We nerfed him last patch. We made adjustments because it was like, okay, he's like clearly Thanos as support. He's like pretty good in top lane, and he's like okay in jungle. It's like, I would like this champ to not be garbage in jungle and garbage in top lane, and so we closed the gap some. We didn't get as much support like power down as we wanted to, so we're going again now. But now the gap is closed. Like, well, we can just do a flat nerf and it's still going to be okay. So you know, if we hit the magnitude right, he is as strong as he was last season. If players are like, still Maokai's overpowered, it's like, yeah, that's still true. Like, he's still going to win more than half his games, but like there's a lot of champions where like they can win more than half their games, people are okay with it.
Yeah, it's really interesting how balance works because you have to balance for the real world.
Yeah,
you have to balance for what people are actually playing.
Yeah, it's
not a problem if something, you know, is not getting used or getting abused.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. One thing I've always thought was interesting with balance is I think I mentioned it on one of our earlier ones, but you know, a lot of people like using win rates as you know, the metric for how good is this champion. You know, 50%, they're completely fair, above their OP, below they're bad or whatever.
49.5, trash.
Yeah, but one thing that I always I was always surprised to never hear it in the conversation is that popularity for champions actually is going to affect that a lot, right?
Yes.
Because if your champion just happens to be good against champs that are popular, you know, they're like the evergreen, like the Lucian, Ezreal, Lee Sin types who will pretty much always get played even if they're bad because people like them. So if your champion's good against these champs, like, well, its win rate's going to be higher because that's who you are playing against more often.
Yep. Yeah, so there's a couple things here. So one is, you're totally right that, like, you know, reality is what matters, and so, you know, your observed win rate is a factor of everything else in the game, right? Like, actually, Blitzcrank is banned all the time, and so champs who are bad on a Blitzcrank just like have high win rates in Korea because he has a 70% ban rate in Korea. So you just don't have to get countered. Yeah, it's like really high, and it's like 60%.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, okay, well, Janna's pogging then because she's not getting countered, right? It's like Pike only. Okay, you can deal with that and ban it yourself. But yeah, so this is actually something that we're actually building out a like sort of update to our champion balance framework right now. It left my hands like last week, and one of the things I'm trying to get us to build into it is in a sort of automated report of like, okay, but what's your win rate really based on the fact that like, hey, Vex's like 2 most common matchups are Yasuo and Yone in mid lane. It's like, well, yeah, you're going to be really good in those matchups when you can just like stuff all their dashes constantly. And yeah, you're weak in a Zed because he doesn't care, he doesn't dash, you know, directly. Yeah. But you know, like building that in, or it's like, so one of the other examples, like Sylas top is like 1% win rate inflated because he's used exclusively as a Malphite counter. Yeah. Like a quarter of all Sylas top games are in a Malphite. And stuff. Yeah, and it's just like, oh, I actually slam you so hard that I literally have a 1% win rate gain off this. And that's like the biggest outlier in the game, but it's like, we can automate this with data like pretty easily. It takes the time to build out the report that way, but it's like, oh yeah, when we see Taric at 53, but Taric is only used as a tank counter. It's like Taric's actually 51, but he's inflated, you know, like, and then you have to educate players on why 53 is okay. But like you can get there, I think, and that gets sort of like one step closer to saying that, you know, this observed win rate is fine. They're actually balanced. They're just natural counters.
I also think that it's the game is kind of more interesting when those things exist, right? Yeah. Like when it's like, okay, you can build this specific champion in this specific way, and it's really powerful in these matchups, right? I'm not a Malphite player, but if the other team is full AD and I'm last pick, I'm picking Malphite and I'm building full armor, right? Yeah. Or if I'm like a late pick jungle and they have 3 ADCs on their team, I'm playing Rammus, right? And things like that. Like I feel like I should win. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like I feel like I should have an advantage when you've done that. It's like, okay, you know, I picked this champion that should be incredibly powerful in this situation or whatever. It's like Galio versus AP or whatever it is. Those kind of things I think should exist in the game. And to your point, if they are niche picks, it's kind of interesting that maybe you're accounting for that.
Yeah. One that I've kind of wanted it to happen, but at the same time, I recognize that it can't. But like some stat site to come out with just like a crazy placebo for just like a few days, right? Like just out when a new patch drops, you'd be like Kog'Maw 60% win rate, and it's a totally fake number.
Everyone starts
but
playing
people
it.
like the perception changes, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
People will be like, how is Kog'Maw so broken? Like everyone's gonna be playing Kog'Maw. People are gonna be like, this champion's been broken forever. He's got so much range. He's got like hybrid damage, all this stuff. And then it's like, yeah, actually, sorry, we had a bug. It's actually 45% win rate champion. And everyone's like, oh, I'm still pissed about it.
Yeah.
It'd be super funny too if like you got a rank 1 challenger player to be like making a troll build, and then everyone would be copying this
copying it.
build. They'd be
Yeah,
like,
ruler.
"Oh my god, the Dead Man's Plate Frozen Heart Kog'Maw is insane. The rank 1 challenger's building it." So then you get everyone
Yeah,
building
yeah.
it. Because I was gonna say when you were talking about things that affect these win rates, and I've noticed the recommended build has a massive effect on overall win rates for champions. You can tell when there's like an update. Sometimes it'll be on patch update when the recommended build gets changed or something, and you'll have this big jump because you'll notice like an aberration in patch notes, like, oh, there wasn't any buff or nerf or something.
Yep.
There's like a full percentage, change because now people are.
Well, it's like Smolder building D-Blade and Longsword and stuff. That's what people were starting with, and it was a full couple percent win rate lower than just a Doran's Ring start.
Yeah, there's a bunch of weird stuff around builds. So an example I have, actually, if you can find this on public stats websites, if you look at Hecarim's starting item build, if you go Blue Smite Potion, you have a like 5% lower win rate than starting just Blue Smite. Not because 50 gold is a 5% win rate change. That's obviously ludicrous, but it's like, oh, Hecarim mains understand they don't need a potion.
Yeah,
when they
smart
clear.
people.
And bad junglers need a potion. And so that just tells you the quality of player is a 5% win rate jump. And not all junglers have that big of a gap, but it's really obvious for Hecarim. Similar to your point, actually, about rec builds, there was a bug with our rec items for a while where a bunch of crit marksmen were being recommended quick blades first slot. And you'd see like Zeri and Xayah had like a 9% first item quick blades pick rate, which is like trash compared to like Kraken Slayer or Shiv or something. And it's like, yeah, a bunch of crit marksmen have really bad win rates because 10% of them are building horribly. It's like, yep, that's going to deflate it because people are just like, they're autopiloting and it's like, yeah, our bad for having a bug here, right? But it's like, yeah, people autopilot their builds through rec items a lot and you just like get wrecked sometimes.
Yeah.
It's really interesting to me because I feel like years ago and stuff, when you would obviously remember this. You remember when there was the initial kind of wave, even pre all the LS stuff, of just no one was building healing debuff items, and you would have been in the LCS at this time. And I remember seeing games. There was one that was like the most extreme example. A team had something like Trundle, Soraka, Vladimir, and the enemy team still didn't build heal cut, and it was just this thing where I remember talking to I think it was Wild Turtle at the time, and I was like, why is no one building, executioners? Like, why is no one building heal cut? And he was just talking about the feeling of it. Oh, like, well, like LDR or whatever feels so much better. Like the number is bigger and stuff. I'm like, well, yeah, but you're like they healed for like 3,000 in this fight. You auto attack them one time, you dealt 1,500 damage, right? And it's interesting because I feel like Pro has moved past that to the point where now a lot of pros, I think, are looking at data and they are looking at win rates and they are looking at things. I recently went and saw some scrims and stuff, and I saw the players in between games looking at win rates for items and stuff. But I also think people really misuse the data.
Sure.
And especially one of the things that people really focus on is really high elo data, which means that it's very, very limited, right? So people,
Just small sample size.
Exactly, very limited sample size. Something I also hear people talk about, they're like, oh, this champion is 54% win rate in Masters. It's so broken. The average win rate in Masters is like 53.6.
That's
the
a
biggest
problem
one.
specific to LoL Analytics, which is the most popular
that's what everyone
win rate
uses.
site.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That site is so fake for win rates. Like it's great for a lot of things, like seeing what items people build, like matchups comparatively. But like when you look at junglers, it's like 90% of the junglers in the game have over 50% win rate, and like half of them have 55. I'm just like, yeah, I don't think that adds up.
Because Masters players are playing also against Diamond players and lower elo players. So the higher you get, those players on average have a higher win rate. Like that's just a fact. So it's like Challenger players have a higher win rate on average than Masters players and so on, right?
I get
So
why
it's like that's why the data is skewed, right? And that's also why a lot of times, even though people hate it, like looking at like for item data and stuff, it's often better, I find, to look at like Plat Plus and things like this, or Emerald Plus or whatever, where you have a large sample size.
The only problem with that is then the games are played pretty differently too.
They are.
you get all the noobs.
Yeah, you get noobs in your games.
Oh my God, the smirk on your face.
I'm not gonna build a new build.
Yeah.
I mean, it's true. Like champion matchups can be completely different, obviously at a high level, but still the data. People will be looking. There was one example. I was literally watching a pro look at these items and talk about how an item was really OP and how he should rush it, and there was 70 games total. And it was like this as a first item, and it's like 70 people have bought this.
Yeah.
And I'm like, there's no way this is good.
Yeah.
Right?
It's the same thing where I think there's not enough context for most of the time because I think win rates and pick rates and whatever, like they are a resource, but they are not the full picture because otherwise Magi's would be the best AP item in the game. Nobody's building Magi's when they're getting railed.
Death Cap first, it's the best on
yeah,
it.
but it's like Magi's
Same with
80%
Guardian
win
Angel.
rate.
It's like,
Yeah.
oh my God, Guardian
It wins
Angel
all
has
the
like
time.
a 70% win rate. Well, yeah, it's because people only buy it when they're legendary.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And protecting a big streak.
Yep, Death Cap first. You bought it because you based with 5k gold.
It's funny because you see people go extreme on both sides.
Yeah.
Like win rates are not false. Like the win rate is the win
Yeah.
rate of a champion. It's just that people then the context or what that means and how you got to that win rate matters so much. Like it's really interesting to delve into.
Are you able to talk any more about the new framework you're working on, or is that still something that's pretty early?
So it's weird. There's a lot that goes into it.
I imagine.
Yeah. So in general, like the data stuff, as far as I believe, is like, okay, your win rate matters, but there should be inputs into the win rate, which is like, are you typically built in synergistic comps? So for example, Seraphine bought 1/4 of all of her games she's played with Senna support, and that's like more than 2x is Senna's normal pick rate, which means okay, a lot of her win rate is just Senna's win rate. True. Okay, we can answer that with computers and data, no problem, but like that's part of it. Like it literally, like if we buffed Senna by 5%, we'll buff Seraphine by 1.25. Okay, right? We have to acknowledge that. And everyone like will tend to build synergistic comps, but like some will be more than others. So using Seraphine as another example, her most common comps are all AD. So like if you're not playing AP bot lane, you're griefing anyway. So like clearly she's one of the best champs for this kind of role. It's like I have a Yone. Yeah, I probably want to ult when Yone dives in. Like that's a really good synergy, right? Mm-hmm. So we can again count for that with data. Same with counters, right? Like Pyke just slams champions like Janna and Sona. Taric slams a bunch of tanks. So if you're in a tank meta, Taric wins a lot. If you're in a tank meta, Pyke loses a lot. We can account for that with data as well, right? Malphite, Sylas top lane, we can account for all that, right? So those are like really, really good inputs where it's like we can probably make a normalized win rate where we can like get rid of these factors or average them out or whatever. In general, I think a lot of it also just like what players believe matters. Like Taric is like next in line in terms of high win rate supports. Does anyone think we should nerf Taric? I don't think so.
Really?
I
Because
feel like he's been like that for so many years.
Yeah.
too.
I was actually having a conversation with Doublelift and Sneaky, and every once in a while we talk about like what do you think the worst champion in the game is right now? And I was making an argument for Taric.
Sure.
I think he's legit one of the worst champs, but now you're saying he's got like
He
a good
wins
win rate.
well more than half his games in every MMR bracket.
And has for many
including
years.
I still
Challenger.
think he sucks.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Is like, which is why we're not going to nerf Taric, right? And that's totally fine. And so part of it is I think there should be a pretty heavy leaning towards changes in not what is, but changes in pick rate, changes in ban rate. So it's like, right, Maokai has been really good for a long time, but he caught on. His ban rate is up and to the right as a straight line. His pick rate's up and to the right in a straight line. It's like we should clearly nerf him because he is overpowered and people know it. This is like the Aurelion Sol things from like 7 years ago where it's like, why is Riot nerfing Aurelion Sol? It's only one Trix. Well, it's not true. And also he was like 56% win rate. But also maybe it's okay if he's only in 1 out of every 200 games. It's like, does anyone care losing to Azael 200 games, even if it's like completely fraudulent and it's overpowered? Maybe the answer is no, that no one actually cares. I have to like investigate that, and it's not just gonna be my call, but it's like it might just be that like, yeah, we just don't care if no one plays this and no one bans it. You just like, yeah, he's just the best champ in the game, and it just doesn't seem to matter for anyone. There's some champs that will always have a ban rate. Morgana, Blitzcrank, Pyke, every assassin who's not named Kiana right now has a really high ban rate, and just like people just will ban assassins, and so that's okay. We should have to acknowledge that and be like, oh, we're not going to nerf Shaco every patch until his ban rate goes to 2%, because it never will. This champ could be, completely guttered, and he would still get banned by 1/4 of all players because he's Shaco. And that doesn't mean we can make him, like, we should make him bad. It just means we acknowledge that and, like, move
Is
on.
it worth, like, nerfing things because of pure frustration? Because there are points where if you take it to the extremes and all League of Legends players, this champ sucks, but I hate this champ. Like, I'm so frustrated. Then it's like, well, I guess we have to obliterate this champ, like drop the nukes on him or something.
They literally
I
did
feel
that
like
with old Tom Kench.
Yeah, it's true actually. Old Tom Kench was nuked. Yeah.
When I was on playtest and stuff, it was the lowest win rate in the game in every role that it was played in, and it was still something like 50% ban rate at the time.
Yeah.
And they're just like, okay,
that's when he could
delete
eat
the
his
champion.
teammates on cooldown, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
That was so dumb.
regular
Like, that was
ability.
legit the worst thing ever.
But picking him actively just made your team lose the game. Like his win rate was
Yeah,
so
but
bad
I don't
on
want to
that.
play against it,
I
bro. I don't want my
understand.
I know,
vials
no,
to
I
get
get it.
eaten perma. Like,
I understand.
this is so cringe.
Yeah.
Wait,
and
Phreak,
he got reworked. Right?
Let me ask you.
Okay, please.
The question: what do you think is the worst champ in the game? You have to pick one. I know there's a lot of
Actual losingest
context.
champ.
Like, what do you think is just legit the worst?
Some people will say Yumi. That's actually not true. I think Yumi actually serves her goals.
She
really
doesn't
well.
count actually. Any like what champ would you remove from the game? I don't consider Yumi a
Okay, that's
champion.
fine.
She's an attachment.
Okay, so worse in terms of like, the ability I hate the most is actually Sheikah ulti. The reason is it's like if I know it's the clone, I still lose. Like if I know it's LeBlanc clone, I just like ignore LeBlanc clone and I go try to fight LeBlanc. If Sheikah clone's fighting me, I'm like, oh, I'm just getting stabbed. And if I kill it, I get feared. I'm like, what am I supposed to do about this, right? What do you? So I just hate Sheikah R because I feel like I have no gameplay around it unless I have a dash. If I have a dash, I'm chilling. I'm playing Ezreal and I just like E backwards. But I'm like, oh, I'm Maokai. Okay, well, I'm just gonna take an L against this ulti that like it's hallucination. I fooled you. It just right clicks me like it's Tibbers. I'm like, all right,
Do you,
bro.
do you think
thanks.
he's the worst champion though, or just your
No.
least favorite?
No.
What do you think like the weakest? Just
Okay,
like
actual weakest
if this
champion.
champ's on my team in solo queue, I'm cringing hard.
Man, I'm trying to think of like, well, actually, so I'm playing in Masters right now because I'm playing Maokai. I'm elo inflated. I'm trying to think of like the really like low elo skew champions that actually suck in high, and I'm trying to.
What
think
about Shyvana?
Yeah. Oh no, I
feel like
She's
Shyvana's
up there.
Shyvana's pretty trash.
Shyvana's on my team. I lose.
I think
that's
Skarner
high.
is incredibly bad too.
Yeah,
Skarner
Skarner's
at
kind of
least
sucks.
feel like if you're like against some of those like dash champions, I'm like, oh, okay, I'd like having a Skarner on my team if there's like a Yone or a
Nah,
Down
but
or
like, bro,
something.
play him one time and you're just like, I don't do any damage. Like, I literally am not
Yeah.
doing anything.
There's no way AP Shyvana is the worst.
Oh, it's actually Renekton. The actual it's AD LeBlanc is actually the worst champ in the game, and then if you don't like grief your build, it's probably like Renekton right now.
Really
Yeah.
interesting.
Maybe not in pro because all they care about is lane prio and guaranteed ganks. But
Yeah.
if you're playing solo queue, I'm like, dude, I have for the last 7 years never want to see Renekton on my team in solo queue.
Interesting. I mean, it kind of makes sense, right? Like his team fighting his cooldowns are so long.
Yeah.
What about after these buffs you're hitting him with these this patch?
He won't be first place anymore.
Okay.
I still probably won't want him on my team, but it'll be closer.
All right, how about this then? Explain Cassante.
Okay.
Because Cassante is getting yet another
Oh, yeah.
bunch of changes.
I know.
And
Yep.
I have gotten in the habit of as soon as the like scraping of patch notes goes to PBE and then it goes up, I'm like, oh, I jump on it. And I'm like trying to figure out, all right, what's going to be OP next patch or whatever.
Yeah.
But I always just skip whatever Cassante section there is.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, well, there'll just be another section on him next week.
I mean, you're not wrong. So, yeah, Cassante, I mean, it's obviously like not a great situation. I mean, players have called out, they're like, wow, this champ's been in a lot of patch notes. Like, yeah, you're right. He has been. So I don't know if the problem is cursed and it's unsolvable. The idea of like, okay, so he was made to be a tank for tank players who are frustrated that their team sucks. Like literally.
So everyone.
Yeah. So like one of his lines when he spawns is like, I'll try to get the quote right. He's like, as much as I wish, a single head cannot hold counsel. So please march with me. And it's like, I wish I could solo carry, but I actually need my team. So let's actually play this game together. When you die and you respawn, he's like, why didn't they? No matter. And it's like, why did they? Never mind, we just gotta play
That
the game.
just literally sounds like every league player.
And,
Yeah,
but that's literally the goal. Is like I'm a tank player. My teammates suck. I'm gonna play Cassante and carry it myself. Like
So
that
I
is
can R their carry out of the fight. I can
yes.
solo carry.
So I can win. And like so that is like literally explicitly why he exists. Even his VO is like on the nose about this. So it's like yes, I'm a tank, but I can sometimes solo carry. I'm sure there's a bunch of numbers who can move around and a bunch of stuff, but it's like, okay, maybe the idea of being a tank and then being a carry is cursed and like it's never solvable. That's possible. Like that might be true, and all this work just results in I don't know like a really bad state for a champion. But like that is something that we want to do, right? So we want to chase down. I think a lot of what we're seeing is like we have plenty of champions who have like 47% solo queue win rates and are like in pro play. People are chilling. Like Azir is this, Aphelios is often this, where it's like yeah, this champ is hard to play. But like when it feels like one shot your entire team with Infernum ult, clearly it was like pretty BS. And it's like he pressed R and the entire team died. Okay, we got to change it.
Press Gale Force after it too.
Have you seen ARAM Aphelios with lethality build? Like that is literally the funniest thing I've seen. So you can just stack lethality. You max this thing first. You get an Axiom arc. I've seen somebody just wait in the bush. He ults the team, killed 3 people, and his ult immediately came back up. He just back-to-back ulted and killed the entire team. It was legit the funniest thing I've ever seen.
That's hilarious. So yeah, it's like, they're playing champions that are like explicitly hard to play, that like, people acknowledge are hard to play. This is, someone of Rise. This is definitely Azir. It's definitely Aphelios, where it's like, Jace we expect, a little bit of Jace as well, where it's like, this champion is hard to play, and like that's fine. And like you're talking about how win rates are kind of fake. It's like, this champion is hard, so like their win rates could be low because people don't have the mastery, and like people are very okay with this. And then you see like Faker outplay Ruler at Worlds, and Azir's pick rate doubles, and his win rate goes down 4%, and it's like that's fine. This is all expected. I think K'Sante can be in that spot where it's like, when you see the sick Faker play, you're like, damn, Faker's really good and Azir's really cool champ. I don't think K'Sante is there, where it's like, I see Broken Blade, like, there was a game from LEC, I think it was or maybe it was lower bracket final, where like Merwin, like, the enemy jungler just like walks up to K'Sante and just gets chunked to half, and they're like, oh, that was bad. And then like, he goes to his Baron, and he's like, okay, well, you're at half, I'm just gonna go kill you with my ult now. And he dies, and Reddit's like, wow, what a bullshit champion K'Sante. It's like, I mean, Xin Zhao like just griefed like for 10 seconds straight, but okay. But I think part of that as well is just like, I don't think the skill expression of this champion reads very obviously. It's actually why, so I did the changes to K'Sante this patch. It's like why a lot of the changes are like, oh, I slowed down your spells. The dashes are slower, the all-out W is slower, you don't slow them during Q, so you have more room to counterplay him. And it's like, I believe the champion is highly skillful, because like even in like Masters Plus, he's like 50% win rate for this champion. He's like clearly, air quotes, like overpowered BS, whatever. But if it doesn't look skillful, then like, okay, that's on us, right? If it doesn't look skillful, that this guy is actually a skillful champion, then that's on us for missing. And so, okay, let's make him more readable. That was like the thrust here. It might be that like his all-out E shouldn't dash over walls, so he doesn't get away afterwards. That might be very reasonable. That like, I won for one, but I won for one in a bad spot. And like, maybe I can't turn all-out back off so that they can kill me. And I can't jump over walls so they can kill me. And like, that might actually be the more fair version. And there should be 2 more mechanics stripped out of this kit.
That would be cool.
And then it's like, okay, right, now it's like, oh, you have to be smart about when you ult, and now it actually makes sense when you get caught out and die, and oh, okay, we finally made this champion like look and feel fair. Okay, yeah.
I've wondered about, I think those, I didn't actually consider the like, not being able to cancel your all out, eating over walls, but to me, I've always thought that was the most frustrating part about K'Sante is like, I'm actually okay with him being a tank and being able to kill you, but his mobility, like when you try to gank a K'Sante and he legit Akali's away from you, it's just like, wow, that was messed up. But also, like I think having an unstoppable on his W is kind of like is more trouble than it's worth, because that actually counters so many things, right? Like you're playing Renekton against him, and it's just like you override any CC with his W, and like you can't stop K'Sante from being able to get away. So I would look at that area of stuff being like, this doesn't feel very fair to play against. And as the K'Sante, it's like, it's cool I can do that, but like, I would rather have more power in other stuff and not have like something just unfair like that.
Yeah, I mean, so you're not wrong. I mean, some of this is like, well, the kit was created, and then I joined the team, and it's like, well, I'm not gonna like replace spells entirely. So the nice thing is, for any dash, like they all treat stuns the same way, unless you're literally Yasuo E or Caitlyn E, which is like if I'm Rocket Jump, like if Renekton tries to W me, if I start Rocket Jump, it's getting through and I'm dashing over that way, which is really no different than what Ornn W does or Ornn E does or what K'Sante W does. So like if it's Flay or Hook, okay, yeah, he actually beats those straight up, right? Tristana has a very tight timing test to get the quarter second correct. K'Sante's timing test is to get the 3/4 seconds correct. That's obviously much easier. They're both, they both start instantly, and they both will overwrite the hook once you start the spell cast. So it's not that different from other similar spells. It's still different, right? It's still, a bit more generous, right? If like Jax is going for his E, I think K'Sante's winning in a Jax because like he just checkmates all of Counter-Strike, right? He can hold it for long enough that like he'll just at least animate his W during the stun animation, and so it's a winning matchup for him. Again, he can be immune to like Jace knockback because he's unstoppable. So can Ornn, and it's the same timing test, right? Of you started E, press a button on time. So in some of these cases, it's not actually that much better than other similar skills. Again, it covers a lot of bases, so it is very, very good. But at the end of the day, it's like, this champion, I think his health regen is like fine. His, he has no range trading at all. Like he can't reach even as far as like a Maokai Q in a lot of cases. And so, yeah, he has a parry because he was meant to have like a skill test of like, oh, okay, like time this ability well to like win your trade. You know, it's the Fiora W thing where it's like, if I can guess when Renekton's gonna hit W, I'll press W first and feel really good about it. And similarly, it's like if I'm Lee Sin and I'm really smart against you, I can time out your W and then kick you back before I get hit with the second half of it. So it's meant to be a skill test, right? It's meant to be skillful to play as and play against. Numbers could be wrong, right? There could be, you know, too many mechanics as champion, but like these skills aren't entirely out of line.
I think it's always interesting because to me it's one of those things where when abilities are doing a lot of different things at once, there can be an aspect of it that feels really fair, whereas the others, it's just like how Fiora in this patch is getting the attack speed on the W nerfed, right? Because the W was always supposed to be this skillful thing where it's like, okay, she times it right, she gets your stun, okay, you got me, you know, like, okay, you get the advantage. But it felt really bad when she would just press W randomly in a trade in a melee matchup, and then all of a sudden you lost 50% attack speed, and you're just kind of dying in it all in.
You got me.
Yeah,
you got me. You pressed your button.
I'm not saying, oh, you got me when she fails her parry and then I die because of an attack speed debuff.
Yeah.
Whereas similarly with Cassante, you know, it's like everything you're saying to me made sense there. But it also like stuns you, right? And it does these other things too.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, if it was only this skillful ability that was able to immune CC, then I wouldn't really care at all, right? In that way. But if Cassandra just walks up to me, like E's to a minion, Qs you, and then starts pressing W, okay, well, you can't stun the person, but also, you know, you want to do something because otherwise he's going to W into you and stun you, and then he's going to all out. And it's like, so there's all these things that are attached to it. And I feel like that, to me, seems like one of the most difficult things in balance is that there can be an aspect of an ability that is fair and fine in isolation, but in combination with other things can start to feel really frustrating.
Yeah, true. I mean,
I think. Oh, sorry.
no, please.
Because like looking at pro play, I imagine trying to balance the game for both solo queue and pro play is like extremely difficult.
Yeah, it is.
But one thing we see with pro play like over and over again is these sort of like evergreen champs, which anytime they're remotely playable, they're picked, right? And a huge aspect of it is how safe am I from ganks? Because stuff like Ezreal, Azir, now Cassante, Renekton, whatever, is like you can play the game entirely differently if you know, okay, if their jungler shows up here, I will not die. And Cassante kind of has that because he's got his E and his W. Azir's got his super far slide out. Because then it's, you know, say you're playing Cho'Gath, right? If I walk up into engage range, I am actually dead, right? Unless I'm just somehow really fed, which doesn't happen early game, I'm gone because I have no mobility, anything. But Cassante is like, not only do I have 2 dashes, but I have an unstoppable. So like, you know, you hit me with like you're about to VIQ me, unstoppable. I'm about to get knocked up, unstoppable.
Yeah, sure.
And so I think those tools definitely add like a certain level of, you know, it'd be like, I think if Tom Kench's W made him unstoppable while he's diving underground, this champion would legit get played everywhere because it's just like, you know, wow. Because now all of a sudden as a jungler, I'm not even going to bother looking top. So then it's like, not only am I going to escape every gank, I don't even have to worry about getting ganked because the junglers know it's a waste of time.
Yeah, I mean, you're not wrong about that. I mean, Azir does a similar thing, right, where he doesn't have to press E basically ever to play the game, and so he just, you know, has it to get away at all times. I mean, Corki has this with Valkyrie. It's part of why he shows up in pros quickly, because like, oh, I will literally always have W, because what else am I going to do with my time? Yeah, I mean, those are valid points. Like, those are accurate. It's actually part of why we tried to make a lot of Cassante's power budget in offensive W uses, is why it actually has us done a bunch of damage, that he hopefully is burning it a lot. So that, you know, otherwise he's under his turret and the enemy top laner has prio and they get to go fight for grubs or whatever. To be fair, I think we would like if top laners could solo one grub more easily, so that if Cassante's like, oh, I'm going to hold W for the gank the entire time, and Jax is like, well, you're under your tower, see ya. You know, if that was like actually a useful payout, that's not happening in the short term, right? But like that idea I think is valuable. So it's like, well, yeah, he has to burn this cooldown. You're like, hey, it's on a 24-second cooldown. Like, come gank this guy. You have a lot of time. Like, you can finish your Krugs and he's still gankable. You know, would help if, you know, maybe Cassante E shouldn't target minions, so that he doesn't have like the really easy way out at like 600 range, I think is the dash. You know, all these things are ways to make him less safe and less gankable, because I think that's fair. How do you
kind of have the discussions with designers? 'Cause obviously you're on the balance team. There's champion designers as well, which is a different team. You talk about Cassante, and it's like, okay, well, the goal for him was that he could do this certain thing, right? An example I have from when I was working with some of the designers was, I know that like Tom Kench's designer, like his goal was that it was okay for it. Like it's supposed to be the champion that stops you and like frustrates you, and like eventually it's like. That the realization was that, okay, the goal is not actually okay, right? Like it's not actually, you know, a successful thing. So how do you kind of have those discussions, right? Like, are you talking to Casante's designer? Are you talking to some of these champions where it's like, okay, it's clearly somewhat problematic. We're putting a lot of resources into changing it all the time, trying to figure a way to make it work. At what point does it become a conversation of like, okay, well, were the initial goals correct? Like, should this be something that's moving in a different way so we're not having to every patch, try to fix it or try to change it?
Yeah. So theoretically, if I'm doing my job right, I like it's actually why we named it the Live Pod and not the Balance Team. That actually was like a name change fairly recently. Is like theoretically we're supposed to be looking over the game holistically. It's like technically if we wanted to change like the UI of the game, that would be under my purview because it's not a Champions Team thing or a game mode thing, right? It's like it's part of the live game. And so if we wanted to change the UI or like what the pings in the ping wheel are, like that's the kind of thing we can control. And so yeah, we're meant to look at the game holistically. And so we're meant to have like a really good understanding of like what makes League a better game and how do we improve it incrementally every single patch. And yeah, part of that is like League of Legends is a like character first action game, basically. Like obviously the strategy matters, all this stuff matters, but it's like champions are a lot of why League is a very good game. And so they have to stand out, they have to be unique, they have to have their own strategic niche, they have to, play differently from other champions. Like all these things are really, really relevant. And so, that trumps balance, is in my opinion, where it's like a champion standing out. And not that the game shouldn't be balanced, right? But it's like, using 14-1 as an example, the game got less balanced in 14-1. Way more people played League of Legends because there's cool stuff to play with. Like objectively, time to kill shot through the roof and people were dying instantly, and the game was less balanced overall. There's huge winner outliers. Maokai's one of them. Fizz is one of them, right? But it's like, well, the game got more fun because there's stuff to do, right? And characters got more interesting, and a ton of more people are playing mid lane because there's new mages to play, right? And it's like, that's actually just more important than the game being balanced. And like, player numbers don't lie. Like, players also agree with this. They'll be like it's just true, right? So it is important that like we make a good game holistically and make good characters holistically, and on an individual level as well. So yeah, these things all matter, right? And I don't think balance is the number one thing, and I like pretty sure other players understand this is also true, and this is actually what they will also feel and respect as well. So anyway, in the case of like Casante stuff, yeah, I've talked with the designer who worked on him every time I've done patch notes on Casante, basically, and he's like, here are the things that I think are important, and here's what I think is valuable, and what else is going on here, and like he's like really positive in the new W shape of like, wow, not being instant cast is really helpful because now it actually is a parry where if you're getting the most value out of it because the cooldown's long, you're both blocking damage and dealing damage and using it as a combo. Not being able to Q3 flash means you actually have to like do something pretty clever to land your stun combo in the first place. Like, yeah, these are really good changes. Like, good job. So again, this is all to say that like, yes, like the champion theme matters, and sometimes it's like actually a 48% Rek'Sai, like win rate Rek'Sai, who is like good at the early game and has good tunnels.
Hold up,
better
let's talk about this.
than a 50% win rate Rek'Sai, who like technically has a win rate, but like all of her kit sucks, right? And like you can reflect that in things like pick rate.
Yep.
So we talked a lot about like nerfing stuff, but like in terms of buffing things, or making kit updates to things, it's in terms of, well, they've gotten less popular over time. They're not serving their character fantasy anymore. We should do something to serve that. And sometimes it's like give Jarvan 3 AD. Sometimes it's like, actually, we should just like rework a bunch of abilities.
So I want to hit on a general topic before we go on Rek'Sai, because I know I also really am going to spam Rek'Sai. I think the rework is super exciting.
Sweet.
And that's part of my general topic that I want to hit first.
I'm not going to spam it.
Oh, good. Yeah, me either.
I am.
Yeah, hell yeah.
High five.
High five.
Something you hit on early with this season.
Oh, yeah.
And to me, this is the most successful season that we have had in a long time, despite there being a lot of, these unbalanced things. Yeah. I think a key part of that, though, is that the super overpowered things don't last a very long time.
Yeah.
And people really enjoy novelty. It's human nature to always be, excited and interested in figuring out something new, or, that's why this season with so many changes was, got so many people playing.
Yeah.
Where do you see this year and this season? Like, what is the kind of dream route, I guess, for the planning for design? Because I know they are like, we're going to go to like 3 ranked seasons, and they've also added more, the mid-season really big rework. We used to only have the one big rework per year. Is it still in testing, or what's the ideal flux basically of, all right, now it's time to introduce a bunch of novelty and fun things for people to figure out and try and craft, what's going to be broken, and then what might be the time period where people throw up their hands and they're like, all right, this thing has been broken for way too long.
Right.
Now, actually, the overwhelming majority is just super frustrated, and we need the change again. Or something.
Yeah, of course. So, obviously, I think I'm trying to think how much I can say or should say.
Right.
I know a lot of the planning.
So what? What's the public right now? Public info for what?
I don't even know.
Yeah, I guess that's what makes it hard.
Yeah, tell me what you know, and then I can be like, oh, I can fill in the gaps here, because like I don't remember that we had said we were doing 3 splits. Like I've known that for a long time, but like I don't remember what we've said.
Well, now I'm in that seat.
Kobe may have leaked something.
I think I'm pretty sure that was public.
Okay, great.
Well,
Maybe.
we might, but
Maybe he leaked it to you, and now you're brainwashed as well.
Okay.
but I know that for sure because we already had previously a big mid-season rework.
Right.
So
Yeah.
at least
Like, right? We had that, right? We had one.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm happy to go on this train a little
Please.
bit here, right? So the relative content cadence from like the last 12 months, right? Where it was like, okay, 1310 had like some stuff in it, 1320 had some stuff in it, and 14.1 was really big. Like that general shape we'll try to maintain for a while. I'm not saying each one is going to be the same size. Like I think we're probably not going to blow up the map geometry again in 11 months, right? I don't know if we're going to add another epic monster in 11 months. But the idea of like, oh, we had like 1310 was a clearly meaningful patch that was like, this stands out as like, this is a big patch where we updated support items and AD carry items. And then 1320 was a meaningful patch where we like took a bunch of snowballing out of the game and like moved stuff around, and like that had very meaningful changes in how that worked, right? It was like, oh, we're gonna have a really big patch where like, I'm making one up, this is not necessarily the patch. Like we're gonna change AD carry items again, haha. Or like we're gonna like take a really big swing at time to kill, and it's gonna be like durability update size or something. Like that's the kind of thing where it's like, oh yeah, we might do that. It stands out. You can like see it. It would be like, something you'd be like, oh yeah, here's the patch where they did that thing. Might do that a couple times a year. We're not going to do 14.1 3 times a year. Like that's way too much. And I'm not saying that 51 is going to be as big as 14.1 was. That was also really, really big. But that vague shape, yeah, right? Like something where you say, oh, there's a reason why the ranked season would reset. Because like clearly the game is fundamentally different to a meaningful enough way. And then, yeah, what scope of each of those is, I don't know. I don't work on most of them. I've been like in some of the planning, some of the brainstorming. I'm like vaguely aware of what we're trying to do for 1410, and I don't know what we're doing 1420, but yeah, in general, we're doing some of that. Your point about like things being overpowered for a long time, like theoretically, and this is what I'm trying to like level up into, is like, hey, yeah, we can do champion balance every patch and we can buff and nerf 20 things, but it's like, oh, actually, I want to really build a robust understanding of like what time to kill or snowballing or combat pacing or whatever else is, and ensure that like those are within guardrails and that we're more likely to be like, actually, here's like a random patch, here's 14.5, we took a swing at time to kill. We're not going to wait for the seasonal or like the split model or whatever. It's like, here's a big swing. We're just putting it in there because we think, we want to get this into a line, a place that we like.
I've definitely really enjoyed these changes. How do you guys feel like the Grubs edition has landed as far as win rates of securing one early objective, compared to, let's say, last season's first Rift Herald? That would give you a bunch of gold individually and then be able to take turret plates with. From my perspective as a jungler, I love that one. I feel like that was kind of the peak of single early objective, big power spike, because it was so much gold injection. I actually love the design of Grubs being 3 monsters instead of a single one. There's so many different aspects, how it enables another play style as well for like greatly enhancing split pushing for later in the game. Doesn't have this as big of an early injection, but that in pairing with lowering the individual dragon buffs, how is the like overall balance of neutral objectives for the game right now? And I guess that would entail snowballing a little bit.
A little, sure. Yeah, we know those things are gonna, factor in with snowballing, right? It's why we went for them in 1320. So I don't have the winner data for you right now. I couldn't tell you what they are. I could find it, I'm pretty sure. We talked about this earlier with champion winners, right? It's like what players actually believe is what matters.
Yeah. What does your gut tell you?
Yeah, because one of the biggest topics in the community is how junglers are just over-focused on Grubs, and both solo laners, that's their most common complaining topic now, is like, this stupid jungler went to the Grubs.
I mean, if my whole team's not there in 5 minutes, like, I guess we'll just lose. I guess we'll lose.
Yeah. Did you know Grubs gives 75 gold, 75 experience, and 5,000 dopamine?
The weird thing about Grubs is that the fact that you get a bonus from the first grub you kill is so under the radar. Like I didn't know that was a thing till a while. I saw like
your
some
pet upgrade stuff. Yeah.
Oh, I mean, I didn't even know about that, but like I saw a random YouTube short from like SkillCap that talked about how like the first grub you kill is so much more impactful. So like I started doing that in my gameplay. Just every game at 5 minutes, I just rub and I run and grab one grub. Like I don't even care if I can get the rest. Yep. It's so worth doing. Yeah, I think the fact that it's not really like said anywhere in the game that's how that works is a little weird.
So that's valid. Yeah, I mean, it's doing the same rules that every monster does, which is any large plus monster triggers your pet XP loop, right? It feeds them a treat, you get bonus XP, whatever. Grubs are special. Actually, so technically, I'm not saying this is your fault or anyone's fault here. Like, I think technically all the rules are spelled out here. No, this is very intuitive. Like, it's very understandable that no one knows this.
He thinks it's your fault. He just doesn't want to say it.
That's true. Yeah, it's actually Azael's fault. Which is, yeah, so right, the pet treat XP loop happens whenever you kill a large or larger monster, so Baron and Drag as well. Except that you can only trigger like epic style results once per spawn of grubs. So right, technically, like under the hood, it's like it almost stops carrying this epic monster after you kill the first one.
Yeah.
So in the way that like, yes, every time Dragon respawns, it runs the pet XP loop. Every time that individual grub respawns, it runs the pet XP loop.
I agree. That it does make sense when you know the
not
rules.
obvious. Yeah, obviously.
It is a little weird though that each jungler can get the benefit for themselves, right? Like if I take a grub, I get the bonus XP, and then if they take a grub, they get it too, which I don't even dislike. I think it's kind of interesting. Otherwise, it might create some crazy degeneracy of like both junglers just
I killed
hardcore fighting over the first grub, and whoever gets it wins the game kind of deal.
Which happens sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, like, so I do like the mechanic. I just think it's a little hard to understand, especially for like the average player.
No, it's under the hood, and some of that is like okay, where it's like, okay, I now understand why the rule works this way, and it's like, okay, I get it. I always want one grub per spawn. Okay, that's something that people can learn. Some of it also is just like this is just game mechanics interacting in, to be fair, somewhat unintuitive ways, where it's like, yeah, the first one you kill is special. Okay. Got it. Yeah. I mean, it was something that was like meant to allow partial success. That was like literally an explicit goal. That's why there's 3 of them. Is like partial success is meant to be part of this. So like, yeah, you get 1 attacks. If you get partial success twice, they don't get void spawns anymore, right? It's like, cool. Yeah, you stopped them at 4. Okay, well that was actually also partial success. You can feel pretty good that you got once, twice. You know?
Yeah, I love that it's so much more interesting than just having another like
just the one smite fight.
A single one up there. Yeah, I've had a lot of fun with it. You know, especially because you can if you're playing a ranged jungler, you can take the back one over the wall. With most junglers, you'll have plenty of damage, and you can kill them because they'll try and waddle their way around at least over. So you can take one from behind the wall. You can blast cone over, and if you are a champion with a jump, you can jump back out. There's always going to be a smiteable option because the enemy jungler can only smite one. I just love that there are more layers to it, but there is always a degree of how much unseen. Or how much, like, the burden of knowledge sometimes, especially when it gets into weird levels of, like, lane minion different experience for different lanes, basically. That type of stuff where you really have to have done other research or, found out some info a different ways is always, like, another topic. That wasn't really a question.
That's fine.
Let's hit you with a question.
You're not wrong.
Twisted Fate.
Yeah.
Do you think that these nerfs are going to actually bring him in line? And these nerfs that are in the patch notes right now, which is going to be released tomorrow, they're reducing the attack speed growth by 0.5%. That is the only nerf towards attack damage build Twisted Fate. The other 2 nerfs are strictly AP ratios on W and E.
Yeah, so I ended up doing the changes here on Twisted Fate. So I think the short answer is I don't think this is quite enough. This actually came up really late into the patch. This was an oversight, which you can blame me for. It's ultimately my fault. I think we should have gone for a TF kind of wholeheartedly. But it's like, well, a 1% tap down was the goal here. I think it probably should have gone further, to be fair. I think bot lane TF is like 52. I don't think he should be. I think he shouldn't be stronger than the average other marksman in the game, so I think we probably should have gone harder. There's like a bunch of competing goals, right? So one of them is like ADTF existing is probably cool, right? In the way that like brand jungle existing is cool, and it's like, congrats, here's a new champ you can play. And so on the one hand, it's like as a bot laner, like bot lane has always had the smallest champ pool in the game. because people just don't want to play mages, and okay, that's fine. Like, you don't want to play mages, that's okay. But like, every AD carry always has the highest pick rate in the game because there's just only 7 competitors as opposed to like in mid lane or top lane or whatever. So putting more champs in there is actually pretty useful. Again, I don't think it should be overshadowing other conventional marksmen, but being viable I think is actually worthwhile. And so part of what got that happen was like, oh, there's this like cute crit thing on the passive, and you know, here's like new AD ratios on stuff, and like you can max E and it feels a bit better. And so some of those existing is like what got him to get noticed and actually feel different and make ADTF feel different from APTF. And so we could have just like walked back a bunch of those buffs, which risks him not feeling unique anymore. Still might have been the right choice, to be clear. And so I was like, okay, well, I'll go with something like very simple and very safe, like attack speed growth. And data has shown that 0.5% AS growth, it's about 1% win rate on a marksman. Maybe TF's different because his E passive is on at all times compared to like someone like Kai'Sa or Xayah where they only have the bonus attack speed sometimes. So he might be an outlier and he won't get as much win rate loss as other champions get in the same class, in the same role that this normally does. But like if you do it to Jinx, 0.5% win rate. And she has minigun, right? Like she has attack speed a lot of the time. So that's you know what the intent was, and he's going to be like probably a 51 bot laner if we target it correctly. If we get it wrong, we'll go again and you know have to keep going. APTF is I think less overpowered. He gained some because you know he builds rapid fire cannon sometimes. Guess what? That matters when he's a crit ratio on his W and his passive.
And a
so
2-second stun that's targeted at 800 range.
Right. But like also TF was like that forever without a ban rate, right?
True.
Like he's had that gold card for 17 years almost. That's not even that much of an exaggeration. That's wild.
Bring back the AoE stun.
Yeah, okay, that one's a little BS. There's a bug where you cast it twice in a row. That was wild. But it's like, yeah, this champ like wasn't in pro, 50% win rate in solo queue, and like no ban rate. It's like apparently people are fine with it, right?
Yeah.
And maybe it's the kind of thing where it's like he gets flavor of the month, he catches on, people are like, wow, I do hate gold cards. Like, okay, back to 49 you go.
Because also no one played him. I think
Well,
was part
right.
of it, right?
But like it's not like he was weak, but you know, and that's why like there's work in the first place. Like, oh, this champ is getting like kind of undiscovered. It would be cool if we put the alt build back to viability and that crit TF kind of looked cool and the RFC was less of a trap on the AP builds because you shouldn't build it before Lichbane. And so those are all reasonable, but yeah, he's too strong. Like that's true. Again, I don't think he probably should be better than conventional marksman, but being as good as them is fine. He's not so over the line. He's the best champ in the game, right? That's Maokai. But like, yeah, we should bring him down some, and maybe we should bring him down further. But now it's like, oh man, is 51 TF too good? I mean, maybe, but is he the biggest problem in the game? Also probably not.
What do you think about, this is sort of related, what do you think about Ghost right now in the game and its power level? Because to me, Ghost is kind of like really OP, but it doesn't get talked about a lot because
That's weird.
Like TF top is at least what I've heard complained about the most, more than mid or AD, because you know you just build you run Fleet, you go Kraken, Gwynsu, and then you just kind of stat check people. Like you just kill them. You ult on them and you just kill a bruiser by standing on them. Or you can run around with Ghost and kite them. So at least for me, I find Ghost really frustrating to play against because it kind of devalues skill shots in a way because like how am I ever hitting a skill shot on somebody running at 600 MS in a team fight? So like what do you think about that?
I mean, so you're not wrong in terms of like that's what the outputs do. I'm not sure what my answer is for you ultimately because like I can do the really like tongue-in-cheek like, well, what about Flash? It also dodges skill shots, and you can't outplay an Alistair if Flash is on you, and that's like kind of BS.
Yeah, I mean it's so deeply engraved in League now.
Yeah,
like,
I know. That's a funny thing, right?
Flash.
Is like everyone's okay with Flash cheating everything. Like you know, it's technically way easier to do the Lee Sin kick combo if you just R-Flash somebody. It's like why bother ward hopping? I can just kick Flash, and people are like, yep, that's Lee Sin. But because it's a 5-minute cooldown, we're like, he got me. It's like, he point and clicked you. Like, what do you mean he got you, right? Like, this doesn't require very much. I can do that. That's not hard. Getting to you is like a little difficult, I guess, but he can just like ward hop vaguely in your direction and then kick flash you. But we're like as a community okay with it, which is like, okay, fair. As a community, we're less okay with Ghost. It might be the shorter cooldown. It might be the duration at which they are dominating you because Ghost is, you know, very strong for 14 seconds. Those are all very valid reasons to be like, but this summoner spell doesn't feel okay. I mean, Ignite has literally no gameplay. Press button on you, Volibear is sad. Press button on you, take 300 true damage, right?
It might also be that you can take both. So then, like, Ghost is seen as the additional one. It's like, all right, the guaranteed everybody has Flash. But then when you also have Ghost, then like you have two, and you
just
can
dominating range.
You can alternate their cooldowns, and
it's also not new at all.
Dude, I would.
I know.
Ghost has been good forever.
I would love to see a summoner spell revamp for like a new season because, you know, we've got runes reworked a bunch, masteries don't really exist anymore, items have gone through so many changes, but summoners have like for the most part been untouched.
Yeah, true.
And so So
Remember
many of
Surge?
them.
Clairvoyance.
Yeah.
you know?
Do you remember Surge?
Yeah.
He have AP and attack speed.
Yeah.
Replace
I
Rally.
remember there was one dude. I don't know if it's still the
Minion buff
case,
one.
but there was some guy who never switched off Surge, and he was able to use it for like years after it was
That's so
disappeared.
funny.
Because it was like if
we
he
never
never
deleted the
touched
script.
his setup, he could just go in with Surge every game. It was so funny.
That's actually really funny.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that'd be cool. Some summoners, I'm just like kind of falling asleep
Yeah.
during like cleanse.
That's not unreasonable, right? That's the kind of thing that we could do on a, you know, a 14-1 or, you know, 13-20 kind of patch where it's like, we're updating all the summoner spells in the game and we're not going to touch Flash. Pretty sure I would fight back against that one pretty heavily.
Have you ever considered? This has been my take. In everyone says, well, we can't do anything about Flash, blah blah blah. Just make Flash default.
Yeah, I mean,
Just everyone just gets Flash, and then you can pick other summoners.
one summoners. Yeah, I mean, yeah, that could be a thing.
I
right?
think that would be way more interesting. It's like you just load into the game. Everyone has Flash. You get 2 summoners, and then you could actually change some of how those different summoners work. Right? Like that would be a significant change to the game.
Yeah, it would.
And something that I think would actually give you the ability to mess with things a bit more because everyone would have Flash kind of like by default.
I was thinking of making Flash and Ghost, like all mobility summoners, maybe they add even a third one, be one class. And so you can only have one of these mobility ones. That way you couldn't have both. Because if you have Flash default and 2 more summoners, then I feel like we're getting bloated power maybe.
And you want to try to
have-
fight a
Everyone's
cleanse Ghost
getting it.
Flash of
Yeah, I
Thalios?
know everyone's going to get it, but then you get into the arms race where if everything's OP, then...
Yeah, but I think it's fun, right? And I'm not saying that it's anything you change like that requires a lot of changes, right?
Yeah, it'd be
because
insane.
some champions become wildly stronger than others, and so on and so forth. That's the same with the item reworks. That's the same with all this stuff. Maybe none of the current summoners are in the game still, right? Maybe it's just Flash, and then everything else is new things. But to me, that's stuff that I think would be fun.
I agree.
And I know anytime people talk about changing summoners, they're like, well, we can't change Flash, and it's like, okay, we'll just make Flash part of the game by default almost.
That would be good. I had one other question for you, Phreak, that I've been very curious about. What do you think about all the like cantrips, if you will, in the game when it comes to like, you know, added damage from runes and items and stuff? Because one thing that I noticed, I was going back and watching some like really old League, and it was kind of a lot easier to tell what was going on in fights because it would be like, you know, for the most part, all the damage I'm dealing is my champion's kit. Whereas nowadays, it's crazy. Like I get hit by a Lux E in lane. I'm not taking Lux E damage. I'm taking Lux E, Comet, Scorch, Cheap Shot, like my Luden's gun, like there's just so many layered effects.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Do you think it's gone too far? Do you think like, okay.
Yeah, I mean, so right, 14 shipped,
we got
2 weeks ago, and nerfed a bunch of them.
It did nerf it.
Yeah, so I think we're pretty over. I think it's again like there's a bunch of moving parts here, right? But like, so in general, my opinion, but this is something that like I'm not going to force through by myself, is like, yeah, I think we have way too much proc damage in the game. Where I land one spell and it applies another 80 damage over the top of it. I mean, sort of it is, I agree. I think so. For example, opting into an item like Storm Surge is really cool and it has a really good effect and all that. But currently right now, Electrocute out damages Storm Surge late game. And
that item is so nerfed.
I know.
Storm Surge is so trash.
Yeah, and unfortunately, it's like, well, because people's current builds right now are Electrocute, Cheap Shot, or the one where you sudden impact, and Storm Surge and Lich Bane, and it's like, oh, I just did 800 damage to you, and Fizz W, by the way. It's like, oh, okay. So it just adds up so much, and a lot of this is like, yeah, there's a lot in runes right now, right? And I would much rather Storm Surge be this has the most burst damage in the game. It has the best effect, and you have to like find a home for Lich Bane where it doesn't actually beat Storm Surge, because I think that effect is like really, really subtle.
I like Lich Bane.
Yeah, it's a good item.
I like the idea of every
Very good
champion.
item.
Yeah.
It is really strong,
But
but
even shape
I just really like the idea of auto attacks being a part of every champion. Because,
I agree.
like when you're a mage, auto attacking is just something in the game that it sort of combats mobility creep in a way, right? Because you have to stand still to get off an auto attack, right? And so I think that allows more counterplay from the other side. One thing that, like, not even just the strength of all the procs. I think just as far as clarity goes, as a player, it's a lot harder to tell what's actually happening to you when there's so many procs, because say you're bot lane, right? You're against 2 champions, and now that's double as many things that are just layered onto you. And so I don't know, maybe changing them more to be, because I think Cheap Shot versus Sudden Impact's actually like a pretty good example of this, where like Sudden Impact makes their thing do more damage, which is at least more intuitive than like
I agree.
Their ability does the same damage, but then there's a little extra on you from Cheap Shot, because it's like, you know, who's got the mental capacity to try to like weigh like, okay, there's 6 potential procs that are hitting me, like how much is each one going to do?
Yep. No, I 100% agree with you. Wild Rift, my understanding, I wasn't really big in the game, tried this for a little bit where they said, oh, you actually bring like 3 runes in the game or something like that. Like they actually just cut down the number of runes that you ran. And my understanding is like, people are like, oh, I just have fewer choices now. You just like made runes worse, even if like we think the gameplay quality is better. And like, you know, I like both agree here. And they went back and runes are like the same as League right now. Now it could be that like, we should still just replace what the effects are. And there should be like way fewer proc damages, or way fewer ways to get mana is another one where like it's just mana items don't exist because you just run mana flow band or whatever. You know, there used to be a thing where like back in the day, you know, fighters had mana on Sheen, and that was like, oh yeah, part of the reason I like Sheen is because once I buy this mana crystal, I like have a way better time playing my lane out. And just like having that small transformation of like, oh, my abilities feel way better first recall is like, there's value in that. And that gets, you know, deflated over time as you know, it's like, well, I just run mana flow band or whatever, or I just run presence of mind.
You know, one interesting thing that I've noticed got a little lost with Runes and Masteries is, so like, it's like a trade-off where before the Masteries were very class specific as far as like, you know, okay, if I'm an 80 carry, I'm getting all these things by pathing down the tree. Like I'm getting percent armor pen a little bit, like I'm getting some 80 per level, whatever it is, lifesteal, and these are just the package I get as an 80 carry. But with Runes Reforged and stuff, like I know that an intentional goal they had was making it so you aren't just going to lose the game from loading in with the wrong setup. Like most of the runes now are like a one-size-fits-all kind of deal, because, you know, it sucks to load into the game as Caitlyn and you've got like 15 AP and no attack speed or anything. So I get that, but in a way, it almost feels like it kind of like limits how unique each class can be. Like, you know, if it's like all fighters, you have this package of things that's going to make like these items synergize better for you and whatnot. So I definitely think that got lost a little bit.
I'm almost just to play devil's advocate a bit. Like I think, you know, it's like Runes Reforged obviously was a while ago now, but I remember when Runes Reforged came out, and the explicit stated goal, even like later just Google it, is talking about, you know, choosing your play style and like picking the way that you want to play the game by picking runes. And I do feel like when more and more power gets taken out of runes, and I think this absolutely happened with Runes Reforged, and I think it happens, you know, a lot in League. Like everything just starts feeling generic, and then I just don't even care about runes anymore. It feels like everything starts doing the same thing, right? And I even feel like we're somewhat in that problem space a little bit now, where it's like, okay, you're calling out all these different runes, but functionally it's all just the same crap, right? It's like Electrocute, Comet, Airy, all these things. It's really just like, are you doing a 3-hit paradigm? Are you poking constantly? Do you have a slow on your thing? Okay, well, you're going Comet. And for AD, it's the same stuff. Okay, PTA, do you have a quick hit combo? Conqueror, are you extended? Lethal tempo, do you value attack speed? And are you extended trades? Like, they all just start feeling like the same thing, right? And so to me, maybe I'm an outlier.
Reforge him again. Reforge him again.
Maybe I'm an outlier here, but like the ones that I really enjoy were things like, okay, Storm Raider Surge I thought was fun because it was different. I know people hate Glacial Augment, but like Glacial Augment I think is actually interesting because it's different. Spellbook is interesting because it's different. Like these are ones that I actually feel like I am changing a bit how I play based on those. Whereas most of them, I'm just clicking the damage one that fits my champion's like playstyle the best.
Still in the game? I haven't seen it unleash Spellbook in so long. Here's
the thing. Spellbook is still in the game. It's still good. And right, Azael's is the alien here, where it's like, no one runs the funky stuff. Like, I'm one of the only sports who buys Wardstone. That item is insanely
really
overpowered.
That's crazy,
Like, Wardstone is cracked, but like it has less pick rate than most Ornn items. Right? It's like this item should be it's just been incredibly good for so long, but it's like, it turns out just like people just want to do their dumb easy thing. And it's not that we shouldn't have like the carve up people who want to be unique and inventive. Like, I was a really big Omnistone fan. I thought that rune was cool as hell. But when people didn't run it, they're like, this rune sucks. I just want Predator all the time or whatever. It's like, this item is amazing. But
couldn't you get trolled really hard with Omni Stone though? Like you get stuck on Dark Harvest or something, and you like just can't proc it.
there were some rules around it, like decaying back out if you couldn't do it. There was a timeout.
Okay.
I'm not saying it was designed perfectly, right? But like the idea of that rune is cool as hell. Yeah, it could betray me, but I also get 3 keystones in 5 seconds. That's better than every keystone in the game, right? You know, and on average, it's going to wash out. It was my sort of read there, but like, so that's the weird thing, right? Is there's always someone who's like, oh, I like the unique thing, like it's really cool, and then there's also has like a sub 1% pick rate, and you're like, okay, well most people don't though, and like, should this be here if no one's going to pick it? And obviously we have things like Predator, which we keep weak intentionally, and there's some things like Phase Rush where it's like actually the gameplay quality is kind of bad when it's like I can't gank mid, Ryze just presses EWQ and then is ungankable, and it's like, oh, so that's the tough thing, right? Is like. A lot of these effects are the kind of things where we kind of don't want to give you them at level 1. Like we'd like you to buy them. Like if Ryze buys Phase Rush, he had to like sacrifice his build to go buy Phase Rush, being ungankable.
Like boot and chance.
Right, it's like boot and chance. Like actually kind of reasonable. I think that's the thing that we could bring back. But you know, it's the kind of thing where there's a lot of design space here that we would kind of like to gate behind items or gate behind champion kits and not just give you generically. And that's why it's like. Actually, we're okay with Conqueror. Like Conqueror's like the safest route in the game. It does no burst. It's like a little bit of healing. It doesn't make you anti-tank anymore. It used to give you like true damage. Doesn't do that anymore.
Isn't that insanely boring?
Yeah, and yet it's the highest pick rate rune in the game, and no one's complaining that like Conqueror is making the game feel bad. But I've seen a bunch of people be like, "Man, Phase Rush Garen sure is BS. He silences me and I die from full health because he runs faster than me.
Yeah,
I can't flash, and then he executes. So." There's no gameplay, right? So like the Phase Rush, which is like, to be fair, a very cool rune and one of the only unique runes in the game, means that Garen literally has no gameplay.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's worse, right? And that's the unfortunate thing.
So it's weird that it increases your move speed and gives you slow protection all in one, because I would feel like if someone's going to be really fast, you want to slow them down.
Yeah.
And so it's like
I see your point.
It's like, you're getting the thing
and running the 100, you're trying to trip him.
And you're counterproof at the same time.
Yeah.
Like that, I don't know. That doesn't
So I see your point. I think the logic there, I wasn't here for this, but I'm pretty sure the logic was like your keystone should actually function. So if I trigger Phase Rush but Singed happen to press W, I'm not still removing it 2 move speed. Maybe you should just be slowable, right? And
or procs as you're rooted or something.
Yeah, and so there's like maybe we shouldn't have slow resistance. Like, actually, I have Rylays and I get to beat your Phase Rush. I'm not sure. But, like, something like Electrocute at least always triggers and always does its full job.
It's kind of interesting, right? Because I feel like there's always this discussion with, like, League versus Dota and stuff, right?
Oh, right.
Where it's like Dota, people all say, is kind of, OP versus OP, right? Like, there's the items do, shape the way that you play much more than League in a lot of ways, like Blink Dagger and things like this, and Sheepstick and Yules and so on and so forth, right? But League is much more kind of like, I feel like, safe in the way that we use our items. Like, there are active items, but there are less, and they are generally less powerful, and especially also feels like it's moved away from even like Gale Force. People complained a lot about Gale Force, but Gale Force was one of the only unique / interesting marksman items in the entire game, I feel like, where it's like, mostly you're just building the one that gives you the correct stats versus something that actually changes the way you play. So are you guys more happy with just like kind of having everything be more neutral in the way that, like, the gameplay should be about the champion you pick, not about the items, not about the runes, not about anything
That's
else.
kind of my opinion. I'm not saying this is what other people think as well, but sort of my opinion is, like, League is a game about unique champions that, Jinx and Aphelios can't do the same thing, because even if they buy the same items, Jinx just does things differently, and that's fine. Like, I actually really like Hurricane, and the thing is, we actually have to special case Hurricane for a lot of these champions. Both Jinx and Ashe are special cased around Hurricane to be like, your kit works the intuitive way with this item because you actually do get rockets, and the arrow flurry actually hits multiple targets, more than 3. And okay, this allows this item to be like, oh, I've souped up specifically Ashe. I've souped up specifically Jinx rockets. That's really cool. And those kind of things are pretty good. This is Morgana with Zhonya's. Like, you still have to be Morgana, but like Zhonya's makes you play Morgana like in a more interesting way. I'm now allowed to like survive during my ultimate, or I have Rocket Belt on Fiddlesticks. Cool, like I can reach you more with Crowstorm, but like Crowstorm's the star of the show here. I'm just helping me Crowstorm better. I think those items work really, really well. I think Gale Force was just like, oh, I'm Aphelios? No, you can't kill me. Is like, it just feels different than like the Morgana Zhonya's case. And so, it's the kind of thing where we kind of like champions maintaining their weaknesses, but we also like them enhancing their strengths as long as we're okay with it. Like, old Dash Stridebreaker was not okay.
I mean,
that was a crazy item.
Yeah, right. Like,
most of the problems are with mobility things, because like the continuous criticisms are like, oh, the Tom Kench eating people and denying all my CC, the phase rush when you just get to run away, the Gale Force when you get to dash away, the Stride Breaker when you get to dash on them. A lot of the things, mobility changes the way that champions play the most.
Yeah.
Because there'll be situations where even if I spend a lot of money for my mobility, if you play this against somebody who has enough, is far enough ahead, like they have the extra damage, you get the most what the hell moments.
Yeah.
When one of those mobility difference changes kind of happen.
I really like when League has the an offensive incentive attached to the mobility, because phase rush, for example, if it was you only move faster toward enemies, like it would still make Garen pretty obnoxious, but not in the way that like, okay, I gank him and he's just legit gone. Because Renata W has that, right? It's like you only have move speed going towards them, and it doesn't feel as annoying. Where like for me, the thing that's always like tilted me about enchanters is it's not the fact that like they're buffing up their teammates, giving them more damage, making them hard to kill, but like they all make them so fast.
Yeah.
Like
I feel like Lulu just can't be caught.
Yeah, it's just like
hits you from 650.
It's one thing if he can just stat check me, right click me to death, but like at least give me a chance to fight him. Like this guy is so crazy. So
yeah. I mean that's fair.
I think
like the nerfs I did was to Melio, and I nerfed the move speed on his E because it can stack it to he could stack it to like 50%.
I mean, move speed and range are the two most powerful stats in the game, I think, by far. And I think they're also the ones that scale the best with skill, which is why we saw Zeri dominate pro for a million years, because it's like, turns out you give a champion with stacking move speed and has lethal tempo and like 900 range on the Q. Yeah. Well, if you play it really, really well,
you're immune.
You don't die.
I think it would be cool. Like this could be a horrible idea, but it's
great. Let's go. I can't wait. Here we go.
If there were more trade-offs in items, for example, the old Gargoyle Stone Plate, it would give you a huge shield, but you do way less damage when you press it.
That, yeah.
Or no, it was max health, not a shield. And so, I've talked to Sneaky Double about it, but like, what if there was an AD carry item that like you activated it, or it procced off a certain number of autos, and then it made it so like you lost a lot of move speed, but you gained range, kind of deal. So it would make you kind of like a turret in a way, or an item that increases your damage but increases your damage taken.
Yeah.
Do you think that would be cool, or is it just
ult and then they die?
or would there be some problem with that?
So there's a lot of games that use like Kiss Curse designs. That's like the general nomenclature for it.
Yeah.
And they're very exciting, like to think about design wise. My experience has been they don't tend to work well in League for whatever reason. Either players just like don't like it, or it just, for whatever reason, it just like doesn't seem to work out very well. Like Master Yi used to be this, where like you had % bonus AD, and then when you activated it, you got true damage, and then at the end, you just didn't get the bonus AD until it came back from cooldown. And just like for whatever reason, just like these mechanics just like didn't feel very good to use. I mean, Blitzcrank players hate that their W slows them at the end, right? And it's like, well, we have these in some cases, and like Blitzcrank is actively a strong champion, right? He wins a lot of games. He has a huge ban rate, especially in NA and Korea, and like, he's balanced around the slowing at the end. In fact, he's still more powerful than that. And people are like, but what if my W slow? They're not like, man, I love how fast I move in the first half of W.
What I would say to that, though, is I think there's a difference between something that's in a champion's kit and an item that you buy because you're opting into it.
That's fair. You're right, there's a difference there. I mean, this can exist with like runes and stuff as well. It can exist with items. I feel like in general, players just like, well, why would I do that? Why would I make myself weaker? When I can just buy something that is always upside. That's just always what it feels like.
Okay.
Not that there's not people like Azael who like phase rush, which is not a negative, or me like who likes Wardstone, where it's like, yeah, I'm like the less than 1% who enjoys this thing, and I know it's good and I'm fine with it. But yeah, in general, it's like you can probably just like make an item that does like the forward thing there, but is appealing to more players. And so it's very hard, I think, to be like, oh, I'm gonna make this thing, I'm gonna intentionally cut the player base in half by giving it a downside, even if it's gonna be as powerful.
Okay.
If it's an item too that you have to make that choice, then I know you always come into the issue that a lot of people don't use active items.
Also true.
And so then it's insanely hard to balance, because the ideal situation is like, oh yeah, I'm choosing the moment when I do this Kiss Curse. But then a lot of people
is that not like I've heard that thing. It's like 90% of player base don't use active items, and I'm like, I'm okay with that. Like you can make active items more niche in that way, because it's like, as long as you're not required to have one,
though. That's the difference. So like,
I mean, that's a skill problem. Like are players not allowed to just like be bad and make bad decisions?
That's a skill problem, though. It's the exact same thing with runes. It's the exact same thing with active items. It's the same thing with so many of these things. But like Phreak said, they're trying to make the game fun for the majority of players, right? And so it's like, that's something that hurts the majority of players. Like some of those items did. Like the best example was always DFG. I think I tweeted this years and years ago because I remember hearing the stats on it, and it was something like, I want to say it was 2-ish% of players who purchased the item used the active.
Yeah, I think
during-
we
Is
Is
referenced
that
that.
including like bots or something? Because there's no way,
no.
bro. Like, how can 98% of people not be
They
pressing
just
it?
didn't press it. I don't know what to tell you.
That can't be a real stat. Like, I don't know, man.
The numbers were insane, and I saw the numbers for some of the other active items, and they weren't maybe as extreme as this because it was. I think partially it was like because it was used as part of a combo. Most players found it too difficult, so they just didn't use the item. But it was like actively the decision, I think, from design point of view, and I don't know, you can say what you think about that now, but back then, at least my understanding was that it was basically just actively griefing the average player. Like anyone who bought this, on average, was just having a significantly lower win rate than buying another item because they couldn't use the item properly. And so
How much of that is just a normal like gaming experience, though, right? Like a level of mastery thing, because I feel
so
like
that's okay.
if you're I'd be like, I'm playing this champion, I'm never using one of my abilities. It's like, yeah, people who never use one of their abilities probably going to have a lower win rate than people who are using all their tools.
Of course, but then that's like, I like the complexity, right? So I would argue to leave those things in. I would actually argue to have almost all items be active items and have different uses and have more things like that and have more interesting runes and all that, right?
Okay, Dota.
Well, pardon?
Said, okay, Dota.
Well, he's also like an OG WoW 40 keybinds player.
Yeah.
So he's like, yeah, everything should have a button.
Right, but like I like League more than Dota, to be clear. But I also think that there was things that the game does really well, right? And I do like.
reading.
I know, but I like the variance that it brings, and I like the level of mastery that you can obtain by mastering all these different things. But the reality is, it's not good for the most player.
You can't be on both sides though of wanting to be on the side of I want to play champions, not items, and then also wanting everything to be an active item and everything being unique and everything being powerful. Because then you're gonna end up in the playing items.
I mean, I never said I want to play champions, not items.
You did, or on one of our original episodes.
Okay, I did this episode.
On like one original episode of this year. Because I remember
champions, not
echoing
items.
Because I'm on the same thing, and at the beginning of the year, you're talking about, because there was this huge conversation for all of last year of people having to chase items, and I 100% was championing that conversation as well.
No, I don't honestly remember, but I mean, to me, I also think that like there's different levels, right? And I still think that like League has unique enough champions that if you have more active items, I don't think it removes the champion aspect from the game, right? There's like varying degrees, right? So if you're taking like the extreme Dota example and stuff, it's like, okay, I used to play a lot of Nature's Prophet. Like you could build this champion and build like full AD like items essentially and be like an on-hit AD character. You could be spell with like Aghanims where you're just pushing waves and bouncing your ult all over the map. You could build
The
like
red zap item.
you could do,
What was that called? Yeah,
Dagons.
Dagon.
You could be burst, like, so there's things like that, but also like you can approach those things in a different way. Like, so for example, by giving things AP and AD ratios, right? Like how League does. So limiting those. So it's like in that case, Nature's Prophet, Phreak decides can only build AP. So like you can't go the AD on hit thing because your abilities aren't going to scale or so on and so forth, right? Like there's ways around that where I still feel like you can be playing the champion and have interesting, unique items. Like this is pretty like, off topic, I guess. But I feel like you could have both, but I also fully understand that it probably doesn't appeal to most people. But I also am someone who like, yeah, like I play a lot of games. I play a lot of RPGs like WoW, but also I play like every single player RPG that's good. I like the customization. I like thinking about builds and thinking about items and feeling like I'm smarter than my opponent by building the right thing or speccing the right way. Or picking Maokai.
And building Wardstone.
Or building Wardstone.
Or going runes that are intelligent in this space. But I also realize that most people don't care about that. They just want to click their rune page. They want to choose Conqueror and they want to go in the game and they want to build the recommended items. And like I get that. But for me, that is less interesting than the alternative.
No, it's important that the depth is there, to be clear, right? I don't have a good answer for like, should we have more or fewer active items? Because like, people failing that's part of the game being skillful. right? There's probably a degree to which it's, probably not okay. Like, I don't think, you should permadeath when you die once in League of Legends, right? Like, yeah, sure. But like, he'd be more hardcore, and I'm not trying to strawman like that's what you're actually saying
by building the wrong item.
But yeah, how bad is the failure case? But the ceiling's clearly very high. Like, no one can do what Faker does, right? Like, a bunch of Zero players tried and his win rate down 4%, and that's fine. But you can have. I think, to be fair, I think a lot of it is the opt-in experience. Like, we have Azir and Misfortune in League of Legends. One of these champions is way harder to play. And that's fine. And there's a bunch of Azir players out there, and that's awesome.
Yeah, you got to really position for your MF ult.
Yeah. But like, MF is like the most picked champion in League of Legends, basically. It's like, yeah, it turns out a lot of people just want to, I mean, like, the character design is also great, don't get me wrong, but like, yeah, she's a pretty easy to play champion with a very high point that like isn't that hard to pull off. Like, it's got really big variance, right? You can get stunned out of it, they can run away, like, the stars don't always align, but it's like, MF ult's a really sick ability. It's part of why she's so popular. And yeah, she's easy. And that's
also
fine.
Ezreal is super hard and one of the most.
And that's also cool, right? And that's also good, right? And it's like, great, they both exist in League of Legends, right? You have both experiences here. And the funny thing is, though, like, even the Ezreal case, like, I would argue like easier to play than Azir, in that like, even you're failing, like, I can throw Qs out and it's okay. That's whatever. It's a very minor thing, but like, yeah, we kind of want all the experiences. And so if we're in a world where it's like, oh, actually, here's your Misfortune, but also you have 6 actives. It's like, no, right? Like, and so it's okay. There probably should be some, right? And like, Youmuu's is a pretty low stakes active. Collector has a special unique at the end where like technically you can play around it. Oh, I'm going to save my E for when someone's low to like get maximum damage, execute them when they get 5%. Yeah, but you could. Right?
All my
It's
teammates
skillful.
do that with or without Collector.
I know. But like, that is an optimization that like truly exists in her current live builds and whatnot. And so, there's something there, right? It's kind of why I like situational passives, because you can get them for free, but you can also play around them. I think Sundered Sky is a little OP, but like is really good about this, where it's like, oh shit, I'm gonna die 1v3. Hang on, bonk, bonk. I bought 2 more seconds, and it's like,
I think Sundered Sky is
like,
cool.
it's actually pretty smart.
I think
it's a well-designed item, and kudos to the designers who made it. But it's like, that's why I like those, because there is optimization, but you don't like literally not get the item. And so there's a nice mix there for me. But again, like, we want the like really hard champions like Azir, and we want the easy ones like MF, and you erode that if every item requires your attention, but you also erode the Azir, like the high end case, if no items require your attention.
Yeah, and you're not going to make everyone happy all the time.
Nope.
There's going to be people that just want to one trick a single champion and want to play this one way, and it's comforting for them.
Yeah.
They're not playing it to be like, oh man, I wanna outthink you, I want to mega mind, I can play everything at any time. They're like,
and they'll do worse than Azael will. Right, per elo, they'll do worse than you.
But
right? That is true.
But they're gonna have fun playing the game because there's something that's comforting to them, that they keep playing the same thing over and over, and they really identify with that. That's why there will be front page Reddit posts where people are complaining about a splash art for a champion that is different from their idea of what this champion core concept is, and you're just like, what? It's because like he has a hat, or he's like younger with a different haircut, and I'm just like, I can't even like understand that perspective, because I don't fully relate to
you.
I'm not fully encapsulated by Darius' identity being this old general, and it's so crazy that now he's got this like academy kid skin, and now he's a jock, and I'm just like, I don't know, he's plays the same in game.
He's got an axe.
And dunks on people.
He's got a basketball sometimes.
I know not to get hit by the outer ring of his Q, and I know he stacks up and dunks on you. That type of stuff. It's just like there's so many different perspectives of people that really love and enjoy this game so differently.
And that's great.
Yeah.
Should we talk about Rek'Sai?
Yeah, sure. Let's talk about
I've been the entire time.
So I've been looking. His computer has been open to the Rek'Sai changes this whole time, and every time he talks, I'm like, oh, here we go.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of good stuff to talk about, but
of course.
I'm pretty excited about it, because I was mentioning to you a little on the way over here, was like, I've always been really surprised that Rek'Sai has such a low play rate, because to me, Rek'Sai is like one of the most fun champions. She always feels like, satisfying, like there's something you can do, but for whatever reason, like when I'm streaming or I'm reading social media stuff, people will be like, oh, I forgot Rek'Sai was a champion. Like I never see Rek'Sai. And so you think these changes are going to make her more popular, more accessible?
Yeah, so the goals are not accessibility. The goals are definitely like actually players like you, like I'm going to play more Rek'Sai. So the goals are entirely around like depth of play, depth of mastery, where you're going to stick with the champion. So yeah, currently she's the second least picked champion in League of Legends behind Skarner.
Really?
She was third behind Corki, and then Corki showed up in Pro, so his pick rate like 8x'd. So now he's like up there a little bit for now. But yeah, she's the second least picked champion in League of Legends right now. Her win rates are, I guess, okay. Like she's like 50-ish, which is fine, but like
high E, low skewed.
Yeah, and not extremely so, but like she still is high low skewed, right? So she's actually like good
because games end quicker and because
Yeah.
early ganking is.
and she still is one of the steepest mastery curves in League of Legends. She's like top 10%. And so all that matters because challenger players play more League than silver players, right? So they're higher up the mastery curve. Okay. So anyway, yeah. So the point of this happening, this came out from just like random in-office conversations. So August actually tried Rek'Sai changes like a year ago, and then just like ran out of time and like just like scrapped the project. I don't know exactly what was in all of them. And then Phlox, who's one of the designers on Seasonal, he did Assassin Items, for example, and he did the train changes. He was the design gameplay in charge of that. Was like, hey, actually, like, Rek'Sai kind of sucks. Like, we should try to play up like the sort of like tunnel lord thing. And I was like, actually, like I had some free time. I was like, I'm just gonna like spin up some changes and just like try, like see what happens. And so I built a bunch of changes out, and I like dug in a bunch of scripts. There's a whole bunch of like Rek'Sai is 10 years old. Like there's some like really old janky scripts that are like, our tools are way better now, and you can build stuff in a way better way. So anyway, she's like, okay, I'm gonna play up Tunnel Lord. And so one of the first things I did was like, your tunnel cap is like 1.5x. You have like 12 instead of 8. I like lowered the cooldowns and everything. I like increased the dash speed and everything. And the people was like, there's too many tunnels. Like I'm just sitting here with busy work, like gardening, like all the time, just like standing on tunnels and like getting rid of the molehills. So I got rid of the tunnel cap thing because it turns out just having a lower cooldown to E gives you more tunnels. Yeah. Because like, they get stepped on or time runs out or whatever. And it's basically just like, okay, let's just like chase this down. Like what is highly mobile Rek'Sai look like? And the second thing was like, oh, actually, we should also play up the passive because that's the other unique thing about Rek'Sai. Like, let's have her stand out and be Rek'Sai and not just a fighter or just whatever. It's like, let's make you the most Rek'Sai you can be within reason. And that's what we think is a reasonable E cooldown, what we think is enough healing on the passive to where it's like, okay, you're really, really hit and run. So it's like, okay, that's the upside, right? Is like you have really good regen. You can go leave and heal back up and come back in. We're going to try to sync your cooldowns so this all makes sense and you have like that flow and the timing all works out. And you're really fast and you're just like very mobile and you're going to get around the map really, really fast. And it's like, okay, well, you have to lose something at that point. And it's like, well, all we kind of have left is damage. Like her base stats are already pretty bad. Her health growth is low for a fighter. Her move speed actually went up a little bit in this one, but it's like, she's not that tanky. So it's like, okay, you're going to have to rely on your passive for your tankiness. You can't just stat check some 1v1. So you have to leave. That's okay. And so, again, the only thing left is damage. And I wanted to give all the various things around regen and tunnel speed that I did. So it's like, okay, we have to take enough damage so that she's balanced. If she comes out and she's like 53, my bad. That's not the goal.
No, that's fine.
Yeah. For you get your 3 days or 2 weeks if she's really overpowered based on if you micropatch or not. But it's like, okay, and the goal is like, okay, we still can't really make her a functional late game fighter in the way that like Jax can like play a team fight out of 17. Like he just like exists and is like, I'm just gonna fight you until all of us die, or Hecarim or whatever. It's like, now you're going to leave. Like you just can't stick that well. So one of the things I tried was bringing the E cooldown down to 5 seconds. So it's like, okay, I'm gonna unburrow auto E once, then Q combo, and then E again. And I like extended the Fury out to like 200 so that like you had to like hit like 7 times something to get your second E, but like that timing would sync up. And they're like, yeah, I still can't stick for 6 seconds. So like I can't get my second E off anyway. Also, when do I leave? Because like with 5 second cooldown, I just like keep fighting and I never go back to passive regen because like I'm not gonna build that back up. I was like, okay, that didn't work. So as much as like I tried that didn't work, I was like, can I make you an extended fighter? No. Okay, you're not an extended fighter. You're actually gonna be like bursty, but like you're not gonna burst like Talon bursts you. You're gonna do like meaningful damage, but you're gonna be like cooperative. You're gonna like help someone else kill them. The AoE knockup, which is something that you had brought up a couple of times, like Kobe as well, actually came out pretty late where they were like, because one thing I tried was like, oh, okay, the way Rek'Sai works on live is she has a knockup on her primary target, a like 0.3 second knock away to everyone else, and then a half second slow after that CC ends. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna play it the slow. I'm gonna make it like a second and a half. It's like, oh, I like have a meaningful CC impact here. And I was like, actually, that's just really lame. Like slows, especially when they're attached to something else, like aren't really feelable. And it's a lot of CC that you don't really care about. So what if we just brought the AoE knockback? Or knock up back. It's like, yeah, full power, all the champions, screw it. And everyone's like, hell yeah. And like no one notices the slow is gone. It's like, this actually matters. Like if I'm ganking like Renekton 2v1 top lane, literally has less CC than before. No one cares. They're like, but the AoE knockup's back. I'm like, all right, cool. So like the theoretical high point that no one's even played around yet, but like, nah, but that was cool though. And so it's right. And this is part of why live pod is about make the game more fun, not just more balanced. It's like Rek'Sai is probably going to be like maybe overpowered for a little bit, but like the game's gonna be more fun because there's a really cool champion who exists who didn't for a while. And it's like the stuff that's like, but theoretically it's really cool if I can get this AoE knockup. Like, oh man, I have something to do late game. It's like, yeah, you're not gonna frag at 5 items, but like you have like a flash play that's gonna feel really good for you, and you're like, okay, I helped.
Are you?
I have a quick. I have like. Oh no, go ahead.
Are you worried about bringing back the AoE knockup for pro implications? Because when this champion came out, it was Cinderhulk at the time, right? There was everyone was like, it's gonna go warrior. It's a damage dealer.
Yeah.
And they're like, we're building Cinderhulk and we're flashing in the middle of the team and AoE knockup, and it got played every game as tank Rek'Sai and competitive, and it was just basically based around this AoE knockup.
The thing is, though, what I would say to that, as someone who played a lot of tank Rek'Sai in pro play, it was the ult.
Did a lot of flash
the ult was like the biggest reason why Rek'Sai was so good. I think if Rek'Sai only had
alarm.
If Rek'Sai had the same CC now, or that's like a single target knockup, Rek'Sai still would have been played back then all the same, because just the fact that you had the ulti for tempo was so annoying to play against. Rek'Sai would always be ahead of you. And, you could also save it to, like, you have tunnels on both sides of the map and you just, like, counter gank.
Am I wrong, though? Didn't it, as soon as the AoE knockup went away, its pick rate in pro just
I mean, it was all the same patch. The ult got changed with the AoE knockup. It was just a rework. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Because Rek'Sai got turned into more of a fighter.
Yeah.
My sort of wishes for Rek'Sai are more on quality of life things. Okay. So I think re-entering her tunnel during a fight is super hard, because it's kind of like the janky thing with, the counter to Thresh Lantern. It's like you throw wards at it you can't click it. I find that gameplay to be one of the most frustrating things ever, and it's the same with Rek'Sai tunnels. Like, if there's anybody remotely close, I'm like spam clicking my tunnel, and I just can't go in it.
Yeah.
So I don't know if there's like, it could be changed to like, have some way to like, if you press E with your cursor over your tunnel, you'll re-enter it first. Or something, because
I'm not sure under the hood. Like, there's probably a way to rescript the E and like put E under like a wrapper, WRAPPER, and be like, first check for a tunnel. If it's not, then cast the real E spell. Like, there's a way to do that, I'm sure. What's nice is there's like a very easy like, oh, if I right click on this object, I cast a spell. Like, this is what Azure passive does as well. This is how lanterns work. This is how bard tunnels work. Is like there's just like a very easy hookup for like interact with a right click in this way. Again, we could rescript the entire ability and get that. It's not happening here. It probably wouldn't happen in the really short term, but like that's a good point, right? Like, that is QOL that like would be valuable to not get like lantern blocked, because that's not unreasonable.
Yeah, I find that frustrating. And then the other one is the really clunky delay after Rek'Sai's ult is like, one thing that I've heard suggested that I think would be cool is like if you ended up underground after ulting as Rek'Sai, so like you would have more options to, like say you queue a carry in a team fight, you start out ulting him, but like you end up underground so you can immediately knock him up afterwards.
Yep. I think that's intentional, where you don't like, so I could be wrong here, but like my understanding is like, no, they really wanted R to be like the to have like a timing that is important. It's why it's missing health damage, not like max health or whatever. Is like, no, it's meant to be a finisher. You're meant to cast it a little bit later, and the context is someone low enough that it's worth me jumping on them and then just keeping up and mauling them from there. I would assume, again, I'm speculating here, right? That like if it's like, oh, actually you just show up burrowed, it's like, oh, I just like QR start a fight, and I'm just Vi. And obviously, like, there's some players going to be like, yeah, I want Vi ult on Rek'Sai. That would be nice for me. And that's not unreasonable, right? It lets you be a better initiator. But I think that's kind of a limp use of the ultimate. I could see it still happening, but my first instinct is not great.
The other one is just like, even if I'm not saying like you have to end up underground, I think that would be cool, but it's okay not to. But there's also like a really long delay before you can start autoing again after the ult.
That's probably,
unless you have your Q available, which will like, cancel the delay, or like sometimes you can E, but it just feels really inconsistent and like super clunky using Rek'Sai ult and then trying to do anything afterwards.
I can look into that and see like if there's a reason why your autos are weird.
Otherwise, it looks really cool though.
Good, I'm glad.
Another thing in this patch, some big Volibear buffs. So
yes.
First question is, how much did Kobe pay you?
Oh, a lot, actually.
So I have, ever since Phreak moved to the balance team, it was pretty close in syncing up with me like becoming
And sending him money
Volibear
every
one
month.
trick. So I've had a policy of like, all right, I am not going to message him for any Volibear buffs or related things because Phreak is the type of guy that, oh, you want a Volibear buff? Ha ha! Nerf him down to the ground or something like that. So I have had a strict policy, not asking for any buffs. And I'm actually scared. This is the first patch in many, many, many years where I have been anxious for it to come out because I'm scared that it is actually going to be too many buffs and too many people are going to start playing the champion.
Then you won't be able to get to play him every game.
Exactly. And so so I started, like I was like, oh man, I guess my time of a one trick might be over. I'm gonna start playing other champs, and I like played Briar and went like 0-7.
Oh no.
or whatever. We still won the game.
Yeah.
So these are this is more Volibear buffs than I was expecting. But I actually think there are a lot of other things that are really, really powerful right now. So I don't know if I'm coping and talking myself down that it's not going to be an issue. Like more people are going to be infatuated with Rek'Sai and AoE knockup coming back, and that's going to distract a lot of people. And there's a bunch of stuff like Belveth and Evelyn and Master Yi that are
Nidalee.
Nidalee is
Bro, we
Shattered
gotta
in
stop.
the-
Please stop buffing.
the Nidalee buffs.
Bring her back down next
She is especially for high skill.
Oh, yeah,
she is turbo insane. She's
Oh,
my
yeah.
permaban right now. She's insane. There's so many things that right now you can play that you get a lot of kills with, and so they feel really good, like the Evelyn and Master Yi and Belveth and all these types of things. So I'm actually I've initially I was super worried. Then I talked myself down. Now I think it's gonna be okay. I can now pitch you though on my one thing that I was considering messaging you and telling you about, and Jat told me I actually should, because it is not like a power buff thing. It is a quality of life thing. One of the only
Double damage. Double his damage.
Yeah, it's double his damage straight up.
it's just quality of life,
Quality of life, bro.
But one of the only frustrating things with the kit, because one of the reasons I love it so much is really smooth kit, is the ultimate. And one of the things that's always so weird to me, both theoretically but also really bad for melee duels, is that the travel time for your
right.
ultimate
So slow.
is the same also for the distance, no matter what distance you travel.
Yep.
So a lot of times for melee duels, I'm in a situation, it is actually correct to never cast my ult, because you spend so much time jumping up in the air and landing down in the same spot where you don't travel any distance that you lose. I've lost melee duels because a Nocturne is just auto attacking me while I'm jumping up and down.
Sure.
So my idea was to make the travel time scale with distance traveled, because I think it would be OP if you just shorten the travel time.
Sure.
It's actually a really powerful ultimate.
The max range would
But
be the same. And the
yeah,
short
the max range would be the same travel time, but then it would shorten, the closer to your
Just a
character
little
you
hot.
cast.
Yeah.
Also, there's a lot of skill expression. One of my favorite parts of Volibear is immuning CC with my ultimate cast.
Right.
This would actually make it more skillful, because if you're casting it close to yourself, you have less time of immunity. And I also saw, is that still in there where Volibear, you no longer will be immune to like you're not immune to CC.
You're unstoppable.
Yeah. So
You'll be stunned when you land.
Exactly. So if I get hit with a long stun while I'm jumping, then I'll be stunned when I land. This would also put more skill into the player choice of like, ooh, I actually want to do a long jump so I can stay in the air and be immune to this CC, and I'll gain this distance, even though I don't want to do, or I want to do a really quick short jump to immune it. But then I also saw there were more ult changes in this patch too, with the ult cooldown going down and stuff. And so I was like, okay, it might be a lot.
Yeah, I mean it's definitely a lot. I mean, there's two nerfs, right? Which is instead of CC immunity, unstoppable, which is like very small, and there's 1 second off the turret disable, and then there's 30 to 20 seconds on the ult cooldown, 1 second on the E cooldown, and then 4 to 8.
In my head, this quality of life scaling the travel time with distance for your ult would feel super nice. And it would. I was thinking about top lane Volibear, because top lane Volibear always has had a higher win rate ever since I started, playing him recently.
Yeah,
it would make a lot of his melee matchups that are already. There's a lot of like, oh my God, Volibear just outstat checks you right now. Is kind of how he plays top lane. I was like, well, shoot, it would be a good quality of life for me, but it might make top lane Volibear just quickly Goomba stomping on a top lane matchup.
Whippo buff.
Kind of annoying.
True, it's a Whippo buff.
I actually have one question about like jungle meta as a whole.
Okay.
In your mind, like you can speak either personally or from like the whole live pod team.
Yeah.
What does a balanced jungle look like? Because to me, it seems like it kind of oscillates between like you have your Graves, Nidalee, Kindred, like the power farming meta, and it just seems like it's almost related with how much you get out of camps, and then if like those champs will be strong, so it's like okay, all jungle golden XP nerfed, so that now it's the complete opposite, and it's the Rel, Maokai, Sejuani, the champions that just don't need to farm and can function on no income.
Yeah, it's tough because you're right. It oscillates quite a lot. For solo queue, I'll start there. I would rather have sort of more moderate type champions. So if I think about like, let's say Lilia. I know she was like really OP for a while. Now she's like pretty fine. It's like, okay, she's like a big damage threat. She clears a lot, but she doesn't like turbo stomp you in the way that like Rek'Sai level 3s everyone every game, basically, right? It's like if the meta is Rek'Sai style champions, I think laners are really sad. If the meta is like Hecarim, where they omnivore the map and kill champions and 1v9 team fights, players are also really sad. So you want somewhere in the middle where it's
Not
like,
the
okay,
Hecrims.
huh?
Not the Hecrims.
Yeah, I mean, Hecarim is obviously like pretty weak right now, but like I think if the best jungler is Rek'Sai, the game is pretty bad. If the best jungler is Hecarim, the game is pretty bad. Lilia doesn't go quite as infinite, which is nice. So like that's a reasonable one. Some of the tanks like Maokai and Zac or whatever are fine. Obviously they're pretty low econ.
People hate Zac is what I've learned.
Yeah, well, Zac is OP, right?
Well,
so that
it's healing. I think it's healing that people find really frustrating.
Yeah.
I think it's getting one shot that people don't like.
he does a lot of damage. The Q can do like 400 damage by itself. So it's like, yeah, ideally I want something kind of in the middle where it's like, I don't really mind Graves. Like Graves eats the map, but like he doesn't like devastating charge you from across the map.
Okay, no.
One shot.
I actually, while you're here, I almost forgot this.
Okay.
I need something to be done about level 1 invades.
Oh yeah, so we
Invades,
agree that they suck.
They are so obnoxious. Like I want to play Vi or Rek'Sai, and they lock in Graves, and I'm not playing the game. Like I can't start anywhere. They late invade my red with their whole team. They take that. They walk cross mid, and my game is over.
Yep. Yeah. No, I mean you're not wrong.
How do we make these junglers not just ruin the game by level 2?
You know the blast plant that spawns in front of blue buff or like behind blue buff?
Yeah.
Yeah. You turn it into a tower.
Okay.
Like, we're gonna 2v1 you.
No, I had the craziest
So it's
idea.
Nexus Blitz.
Yes, you next. I mean that unironically, like, Nexus Blitz literally did that, right? It's like we're just gonna put a freaking guardian in the jungle.
That sucked though. That sucked. Like Nexus Splits got way worse with that.
Yeah.
I had the craziest cook for it. You want to hear it?
I do.
Sure.
It's such a crazy cook. Okay, so this would hit 2 birds with 1 stone. So one thing that also is kind of unfortunate about jungle is leashing.
Oh yeah.
I haven't even started yet. Calm down.
I'm just laughing because this whole episode is just you like pitching Phreak.
Yeah, whatever. Last one.
You're just like,
Last one.
Phreak, please, I need this.
Yeah, but it's on public record now. So
It's true.
So like laners, the whole dynamic between leashing for jungler is pretty lame for laners, right? Because like I don't think it happens in most games, but in high elo games, like your entire lane can be lost because you leashed.
Yeah.
And so make it so it's not even an option to leash. Like, I don't know, make the minions spawn earlier, jungle camp spawn later, right? But give junglers, right? Here's the cook. When you buy your jungle item, you have a leash attached from you to your jungle pet, right? And it makes your jungle pet super strong for the first camp you do, right? But only in your jungle. And if someone tries invading you, your jungle pet on the leash will just beat you.
The Fury dog running around.
Yeah.
Oh, I
And
love
then
that.
put a wall of fire around so your team can't leash you.
Yeah.
They die.
Yeah. So yeah, you're right about leashing, and especially in high skilled play. Like, you just like lose all prio, and then like your lane just sucks forever, and they get to control when it bounces, and it just like as soon as your masters, it's like, yeah, okay, this lane's unplayable.
Yeah.
But like I played a long time in Diamond 4 for like 6 years. It doesn't happen down there. It's just like it doesn't matter. But yeah, so once you're like top 0.5%, yes, suddenly matters a whole lot, right? And obviously in pro, like no one leashes. So yes, there's a lot of validity in being like, if the game starts sooner, you can't easily invade, like leave your base, go start your blue buff, game starts, go to your lane, game starts. There's a lot of validity there. There is one counterpoint that like you might not think it matters, but it kind of does, which is like, hey, for 99.5% of players, you're cooperative at the very start of the game. It's like, I'm Sona, and I'm like, yeah, I gave you both that little blue tick of 15 damage. I'm like, I'm helping my team, and now I'm going to walk through Tribush to lane. It's like, but like, that bit matters some. Like, I can't quantify it for you, right? I have no way of telling you, but it's like, the fact that the game starts with an active 3 people, typically, because most of the players start bot side, right?
Yeah.
The fact that the game starts with 3 people working together towards something is actually good for League of Legends in like its own, again, non-quantifiable way. And in Masters, like, I'm just gonna leash, like, you know, like it weirdly, aside from the invade case, solves itself, because in Masters they just lane and they understand, right? Like, all of your laners are never gonna leash you, and that's okay, and all your champions can clear leashless. And in low elo, no one cares about like lane prio anyway, and they work together, and it's like, okay. So like it weirdly like isn't a problem because players self-solve. The invade case sucks though.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm
Great.
not saying it's perfect, but like it kind of self-solves, which is why I'm like not super anxious about it.
Yeah, I see where you're coming from.
Yeah.
Understandable.
I was gonna say some of the frustrations with things like Graves, or like Kindred with red buff or something, is you're like, oh yeah, I'm okay with it, because you're like a support player now instead of like mostly it's like
Yeah,
junglers.
I'm not getting
You're like,
as a jungler.
and you're like, oh, Lilia's not that impressive, and I'm like, she's infinite power like
Yeah.
I start the game and I'm like, oh shit, she's ahead of me.
I mean, you're right that
You're
happens.
also playing
right?
Volibear, which
Yeah, Volibear's clears suck, right? Like,
yeah, that's why I'm like,
and Volibear just gets kited around by Lilia.
also-
It's
Yeah, he got
literally
charges that
it's literally Volibear's hardest counter is
Yeah,
Lilia.
yeah.
So I permaban that for the whole time, and then when you nerfed Lilia, I was like, I guess
Who do I ban now?
like I have to ban literally now.
Oh,
but
yeah.
But I
Definitely
still, even in
tired.
Lilia's nerf state, she's still really good into Volibear. So it's funny.
Yeah,
but-
maybe with the Q speed you'll catch up to her.
it's been really interesting because I've played League for 12 years, and I've always been like, oh, you know, I play like probably like 4 champions a lot or 5 at a time, just to have variety. I've never, since I first started, been like, oh, I'm gonna be a one trick.
Yeah.
Like I've never really like fallen in love with a champion that much, but so it's really weird to be like, after nobody becomes a one trick after they've played for a long time. It's usually at the beginning they start as a one trick and then play into it. But it's been interesting getting into that mind. I noticed in one of the early episodes I was also on a patch, I was complaining a whole bunch on the episode, and it's because I had Volibear brain, and I was like, I don't like all these things
Right.
that
You
are
beat
bad
my
for
champ.
Volibear, and I was like, whoa,
Yeah, your experience.
that's
with
never
League of
happened.
Legends
Yeah. I was like, that never happened to me before.
Dude, nah, one tricks have like the worst.
They're
takes.
so warped.
takes.
No, I mean it's just objectively wrong, bro. Like if you only play one role, one champion, like what do you know about other champs?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nothing.
I noticed that happen, and I was like, whoa, this is crazy. And so I was like, well, maybe I need to step outside and touch some non-Volibear grass for a second.
The brush is not enough.
So I had to I was like, all right, I got to have some mandated diversify my champion games every once in a while.
All right, well, I think you have to get out of here pretty soon.
Oh,
Yeah, so
time flies.
I think we're gonna let Phreak go. But thank you so much for coming on and
thanks.
chatting about all this stuff and listening to their jungle pitches.
Yeah.
we'll look forward to this.
I got
super
so
release
many
jungle
more
pets.
time you need
I didn't pitch anything. That I have the
The
policy.
Volibear alt
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
That was the
pitch.
that was,
There's a pitch.
Yeah, you know, that one.
owned.
Yeah, the
Listening
that
to
one
their
is,
pitches.
is the art bar because he jumps in the air and slams on the ground. So like, I'm not saying you're gonna say it's gonna go to 0, but it's like right, because he has to go up and down. Either it goes really fast and you're in hypergravity, or
no, it doesn't have to go to 0.
Skip.
It doesn't
I
have to
know.
go to 0.
I know.
Just scale down a little bit,
Yeah.
just so that it is not the optimal play to
yeah.
not.
But he's
cast
not
your-
pitching.
Yeah, but he's not pitching.
But he's not pitching.
Not hard on it.
I had a lot of caveats before that. And I was like, oh.
But anyway, it was great. It was great having you back.
Great to be
It's
here.
nice to chat with you. I think you're doing a great job, and
You too. Keep it up.
thank you. Keep it up. It's been fun having you here. But that's going to do it for this episode of The Dive. Remember, if you're watching on YouTube, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss an episode of The Dive. You can also check us out on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Anchor.fm. And send us your questions on Twitter. I think we're going to try to do a bit of a community questions episode next week because we're going to have another episode next week. We won't have patch to talk about. And we won't have any games really to talk about either. The LCS is still on break, but we're going to be back. I think it's March 2nd. That's what I have in my head. Hopefully that is right. We're also going to have the Week 5 LCS preview next week. We're going to be talking about maybe some other things like some rookies, some coaches, some all that kind of different stuff. So we will see you next week here.
Also, if you want to check out Phreak's YouTube, he still does super long patch
about as long as
rundowns
these videos.
where he explains. So if you actually listen to this whole episode and you're still here, you should definitely check out his YouTube.
YouTube.com/Phreak.